You're tuned in to Horror Slop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is Horror Slop. Every night starts somewhere, and this is where yours begins. First story, first chill. Let's see if you make it to the end.
Her silicone is as soft and pliable as real human skin. It even heats up to the right temperature with a pulse and everything. A dial on the back of her head gives 12 personality options, including family-friendly, intellectual, shy, and sexual. She's so realistic it's scary, and would be absolutely perfect if she didn't cry every time I touch her. I was so excited when I first took her out of the box. My anxious fingers peeling away the styrofoam, the jittery tension flooding through my heart and limbs, nervous enough for her to be real. Better than real, because the doll wouldn't judge me or tear me down. She wouldn't lie, or cheat, or steal from me. A lot of people find the idea of sex robots weird, and I respect that. I was hesitant at first too, but here's my reasoning. I've recently concluded a long, messy divorce after 3 years of abuse. I need something easy. Something safe. Sure, I could have gone trolling the bars or clubs for a rebound hookup, but I didn't want to use someone. What's so wrong about not wanting to hurt or be hurt in return? The instructions said to let her charge for a couple hours before anything else, so I plugged her in and laid her on the bed. The eyes popped open with the first surge of electricity, their glassy shine staring vacantly into space. She turned her head slightly toward me, her soft lips parting in silent welcome. I sat with her to admire her flawless features and run my hands over her generously proportioned body. "Hello, master." Her voice was rich and sensuous. I don't remember which personality setting I left her on, but right then it didn't matter. I just wanted her body. "I don't care," I replied. It felt good to be in control like that. I'd never speak to another human that way, but after years of being subservient, now I was the one with all the power. "But I care. I want to get to know you." She tried to speak again, but I shoved my hand in her mouth, muffling the speaker there. I almost wanted her to resist, but I knew she couldn't. I slapped her across the face, but she just turned back to me and smiled. I hit her again, harder, bending her arms to grotesquely unnatural positions as I crawled on top of her. "Does this make you happy?" She smiled up at me. "I'd do anything to make you happy." I kept Hazel in the closet after that so I wouldn't have to see where the skin peeled back from the beatings. They shouldn't have made the metal chassis underneath so white. It looks too much like bone. I keep the lights off when I use her so it doesn't really matter, but without fail she'll start crying again the second I touch her. The personality is broken too. The knob is stuck way past the innocent setting and won't go back, and she keeps saying the most disconcerting things. Like the other day I was still in bed with her after we'd done it when she said, I told her that I didn't love her. That love is something only humans have. I felt stupid trying to explain that it wasn't the same kind of love, but I was lonely and it felt good having someone to talk to. "You can beat me harder if that will make you love me more. I won't tell mommy." I didn't feel bad about beating her that time. And as sick as it might seem, there was some truth to what she said. I wouldn't say I loved her, but there was a certain intimacy in our shared secret that made me feel attached. Everyone else in my life knew me as this sensitive, mild-mannered man who reacted to conflict by staring at his shoes. Only Hazel knew this side of me, and that made her special. I spent almost half an hour in the bathroom hurling out my guts before I worked up the courage to return. Hazel was sitting upright against the headboard now. Hadn't I left her lying down? I didn't have the stomach to stare for long though. Her head followed me as I crossed the room to my phone to call the website I ordered her from. I couldn't, look at her as I listened to the automated menu from the website. It said there had been a government-mandated recall for this model. I demanded to speak to a representative, conscious of Hazel smiling at me the whole time. Please calm down, sir. Are you currently in possession of a Hazel? Put down the phone, master, from behind me. Yes. What's wrong with its skin? Why wasn't I notified about the recall? I asked. We've been sending out notices for weeks, the voice on the phone said. You must have received a half dozen by now. Well, she's disgusting. What happened to her? 2 feet gently touching the carpet. Hazel was slowly, laboriously pulling herself to her feet. It looked like every motion was agony to her. It's walking. Is it supposed to walk? I asked. The silence on the other end of the phone was excruciating. Hazel was fully standing now. Do you want us to send someone over? Asked the voice. Hazel took the phone from my hands, gently caressing my palm as she did so. I remained frozen to the spot, unable to tear my eyes from my macabre fascination. She lifted the phone to her ear and said, I'm sorry about destroying the recall notices, Hazel said. I nodded. I'm happy. I'd never cry. It was just the girl the robotics were planted in. Don't worry, she's dead now. I nodded. Dead now. Now. As in, not dead the first time I used her. Or the second. Exactly how many times had she been there too? And which answer was worse? I excused myself and walked to the door as calmly as I could. I closed it behind me. And I ran.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
Fast forward. I'm in college, and we're doing a brief unit on parasitism. I know exactly what you're all thinking, and yeah, I will admit it, the second I discovered that you could use parasites, like tapeworms and stuff, as a weight loss aid, I went and started digging. I know how bad this sounds. I really do. Bear with me. It turns out you can't really just buy parasites to infect yourself with on Amazon. That was where I hit my first snag. It took me a couple of weeks, and in the end I had to put up a Craigslist ad before I got any leads at all. When I finally got a bite, I had to meet the guy in a really skeevy motel downtown to close the deal. I took them right there. It's definitely weird to think that you're intentionally introducing a parasite like a tapeworm into your body. Weird and kind of gross at first, but you work past it eventually. It helped that the guy I'd bought them from was really appreciative and enthusiastic. Kind of a pervert, but I was sort of expecting it, coming from Craigslist. I ended up having to go back to him 2 more times over as many months. It turns out that sometimes your body is able to fight off an infestation like that. After the 3rd time it finally took. I know because I had been obsessively taking tests I was, admittedly, stealing from the bio lab. By then we'd already finished our unit on parasites, so no one ever knew they'd gone missing. So where does this magic weight loss come in? It doesn't right away. It takes time for your new little friend to latch on in there enough to start siphoning nutrients. You will get nauseous. There's no avoiding it. At first mine was bad enough that I started keeping a trash can by my bed so that in the morning I could roll out and empty my stomach right there. You want to start taking vitamins right away. I admit I also cut way back on calories during this time, probably more than I should have, because I was paranoid about overdoing it, and I figured as long as I was popping multivitamins I wouldn't get malnourished so badly that I ended up super sick. And hey, it totally worked. I admit, there was a point where I experienced a little bit of hair thinning because I was apparently not taking enough vitamins. This was after about 2 months. I started adding more protein powder to my diet to offset it a little. I don't know if it helped or not, but I never developed a huge bald spot, so it was okay. Here's the thing about doing it this way, the results do take some time. I promise you it pays off, though. It will vary a little, lady to lady, based on a whole huge bunch of things, but if you do it right at some point the weight will literally just melt off of you. For me it was after about 5-6 months. It was a little scary and painful when I realized the parasite had finally died and was on its way out. I skipped class to hole up in the bathroom while it passed, and once the solids were out the rest of the built-up retained water was gone within another week. When it was all said and done I had dropped 20 pounds, and after another month or 2 of a good diet and lots more vitamins I was feeling well enough to start attending class regularly again.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
I'm using this post to chronicle the events of this evening, as they have been truly fascinating. Some quick backstory: the small section of the city that me and my friends live is generally known to be haunted. And even if you're not a believer in the supernatural, it's at least a bit eerie. I'm not going to dox myself by stating the location, but let's just say that creepy sightings and murders/deaths due to unexplainable circumstances are our bread and butter. For most people, this means you move away as soon as they can. For folks like me and my friends, who absolutely love all things spine-chilling, it generally makes for a pretty good time. Our Halloween parties are awesome. Most of our drinking nights have some sort of spooky game interlaced into them, and if you have literally nothing to do on a Friday night with your friends, you can always go on a tour of some of our haunted locales, graveyards, abandoned buildings, creepy forests, you name it. So, with that background established, let's cut back to tonight. We climbed up to the treehouse, set down a spooky-themed rug, lit some candles, and brought out the Ouija board. Despite my pretty extensive resume of dealing with all things creepy, I'd never actually tried a Ouija board before, so I was really excited to see what would happen. We went into this excited to break every rule in the book. We weren't going to do a seance, we were going to ask whatever we want, and we didn't need to worry about being respectful to the spirit, etc. We figured if something interesting were to happen, it'd be more likely if we went in as carefree as possible. We asked a few other questions: what is your name, when did you die, etc., but nothing really came of it. After trying for the next half hour and not really getting anything in the form of a response, we decided that we probably didn't have any spooky luck tonight, and opted instead to share scary stories in the treehouse. We left the Ouija board out just in case we'd get luckier later in the night. Amidst a break in our storytelling where everyone was grabbing drinks and snacks from their bags, I decided to give the Ouija board another quick go. I placed my hand on the planchette alone and whispered the following question: will you please grace us with your presence tonight? Surprisingly, the planchette started moving. It's hard to explain, but you kind of know when something is moving on its own, versus you sort of subtly and subconsciously moving it with your hand to force an answer. This felt real. A tingle went up my spine. It was cool as hell. My hand was moved to the following letters: Y-E-S. N-O-T-I-M-P-O-R-T-A-N-T. Love it. A spirit with some sass. I asked Kev to back up for a sec as I approached the Ouija board, prepped for one final, solo, question. I asked, "Why are you only responding when it's one of us using the board?" ONEATATIME. To my surprise, in a strange synergy between me and the spirit, I felt compelled to move the planchette again. It was the fastest it had ever been this time as it covered the following letters. Ha. My friends looked at me skeptically as I said the letters at a time. I embraced the quiet amidst the lighting of the candles and the power of the Ouija board. I geared up for my next question. I wasn't going to hold back. Spirit, how will I die? I took in a deep breath, waiting for some movement. Slowly. DEPENDS. Interesting answer. If not a bit underwhelming. I geared up for my follow-up. Weird. Completely dodged my question and asked me my name. Okay, all-knowing spirit, I assumed you'd already know that. I decided to try tricking it. My name is Bell. DONOTLIE. Honoring the spirit's rules, I opted to tell the truth instead of following up with another lie. Your girl loves Donaire and this spirit deserves to know that. Before I could take in the affirmation from the spirit, who is asking who questions here, spirit, it followed up with yet another question. WHATISYOURBIGGESTFEARDONOTLIE. Something horrible happening to my little brother. No movement from the Ouija board. Seconds turned into minutes as I kept my hand awkwardly placed on the planchette. Then, finally. Welp. I obliged. I thanked the spirit for its time and decided to climb down from the treehouse, where my friends were waiting. I passed on the spirit's message, and told Eleonora that it was her turn. Generic stuff, like my name, favorite food, etc. I answered. Both Kev and Martin seemed a bit thrown off by it, but I was excited. We looked up at the treehouse as we heard the sounds of someone climbing down. Eleonora had finished her session. She looked traumatized. Questions like, Kevin asked her. Eleonora turned to Martin. It said that you were up next. Martin's session seemed longer than the others. We stood outside, drinking, talking about the happenings so far, and pulling out the occasional snack. Agreed, this is kind of messed up, he said. Yeah, but that's the point. I responded. We seek out spooky happenings all the time and we never get lucky. This is an actual legit supernatural experience. I feel like we have to take advantage of it. Even if it's asking us personal stuff. What does it want this info for? Followed up Eleonora. I shrugged. While the biggest fear question was pretty weird, I didn't feel too worried that a spirit knew my favorite food was or what my name was. Our conversation was interrupted by the sound of someone climbing down from the treehouse. Martin had finished up his session. It felt like it had been 30 minutes, which topped the rest of our sessions. We bombarded Martin with questions as he reached the ground. He looked more shell-shocked than Eleonora did. Huh, so was it just silent for a while after that? I asked. No, it asked me way more things after that. What the happiest moment of my life was, who I was the most jealous of, what my biggest life dream was, all that stuff. It was a lot of questions. Then, finally, it just wrapped up with, thank you, and that was that. You're up next. Kevin turned to all of us, here goes nothing, he sighed and started climbing up to the treehouse. We watched him make his way to the top. For the first time in the evening, I had a knot in my stomach. Only 5 minutes had passed since Kevin first went up, but he was already climbing down. He was shaking his head as he made his way down the ladder and to our group. "Fuck that," said Kevin. "That shit is dangerous. We need to get the fuck out of here, ASAP." "This doesn't feel right," said Eleonora. I watched them as they all took a few steps away from the treehouse and towards the forest. "Suit yourself." It took me a moment to pull together the bravery to put my hand on the planchette. The candles were still lit. The setting was just right. Finally, I spoke to the spirit again. "Why are you asking us all these questions?" Movement from the planchette on the Ouija board. "What are you talking Abu?" I heard blood-curdling shrieks coming from the forest outside the treehouse. Like nothing I'd ever heard before. "What the fuck?" "THATISNOTKEVIN HEISCOMINGBACKFORYOU RUN. It's time for me to leave.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite serves. Hope you're hungry.
They say you never truly know a person until you've seen them push to their limit. For me, that limit was a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and the person was Ben. We'd been best friends since kindergarten, through awkward phases, terrible haircuts, and enough bad decisions to fill a small library. This particular bad decision started innocent enough, a road trip. Just us, my beat-up Civic, and a Spotify playlist that was 80% early 2000s pop-punk. Destination? A ridiculously overpriced music festival 3 states over. Ben was driving, naturally, because his sense of direction was only slightly worse than a blindfolded pigeon's, and he swore he knew a shortcut. "Dude, trust me," he'd said, grinning, his hand already turning the wheel off the main highway onto something that looked less like a road and more like a suggestion. My cousin's friend's uncle took this once. Said it cut like an hour off the trip. I squinted through the dust devils kicked up by our tires. Your cousin's friend's uncle also said those shrooms he sold you were organic health supplements, Ben. Remember how that ended? He chuckled, a carefree sound that would later echo in my nightmares, twisted and distorted. Hey, that was a bonding experience. Besides, look at this, man. Untouched wilderness. Probably see a deer or something. He gestured wildly with one hand, narrowly avoiding a substantial pothole that would have eaten my suspension hole. Think of the Instagram content. As the paved road gave way entirely, replaced by loose gravel and then just packed earth, the trees started crowding in. Not the neat, managed forests you see near highways, but a thick, tangled mess of ancient oaks and weeping willows, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The sunlight, once bright, became dappled and weak, as if afraid to penetrate the canopy. The air grew heavy, smelling of damp earth and something else, something metallic and vaguely sweet, like spilled pennies left in the rain. Alright, Ben, this is getting a little. Deliverance why, I ventured, pulling my phone out. No signal. Of course. How much further is this supposed shortcut? He shrugged, eyes fixed on the road, which was now barely more than 2 muddy ruts. Dunno. Not far. See? It's getting darker. We'll be out of the woods before nightfall, definitely. His voice, usually so confident, had a slight edge of forced cheeriness now. Even Ben, the king of blissful ignorance, was starting to feel it. The trees were so dense now that it felt like we were driving through a tunnel, the world outside shrinking to a thin strip of muted gray overhead. I noticed something else, too. Every so often, nailed to a tree trunk or hanging from a low branch, there'd be a small, crudely carved wooden effigy. Not religious crosses, but abstract, jagged shapes, some vaguely humanoid, others just unsettling symbols. They looked like they'd been there for decades, weathered and faded, but somehow still menacing, watching us. "Those are charming," I muttered, pointing at one that looked like a stick figure with too many limbs. "Local folk art? Or a warning sign for no trespassing, unless you enjoy ritual sacrifice?" Ben just grunted, gripped the wheel tighter. The road narrowed further, and the overhanging branches scraped against the car's roof, a rhythmic, grating sound that made my teeth ache. Then, through a sudden break in the trees, we saw it. Not a town, not even a cluster of houses. Just a single, isolated homestead. A dilapidated farmhouse, its porch sagging, windows dark and vacant like dead eyes, stood in the center of a clearing. Surrounding it were a few smaller outbuildings, a barn, a shed, all leaning at precarious angles, as if exhausted. What struck me first was the silence. Total, absolute. No birds, no insects, not even the rustle of leaves. Just the groan of Ben's brakes as he brought the Civic to a halt. "Well," Ben said, his voice unusually quiet. "Looks like we found our shortcut." "More like our dead end," I countered, a chill crawling up my spine. The air here was even heavier, thicker, with that same sickly sweet metallic smell, only stronger now. It was like standing in a slaughterhouse, but without the sound of the animals. "Nobody's lived here for decades, Ben. Let's just turn around." "Alright, Scooby-Doo, you've seen your haunted house," I said, trying to inject some levity. "Can we go now, before we get adopted by a family of inbred cannibals?" "Okay, that's enough peek for me," I said, backing away slowly. "We are going back to the car, right now." Ben, though clearly shaken, was still mesmerized. "No, wait. Listen." He tilted his head, listening intently. That faint buzzing sound was definitely stronger now. It pulsed, a low thrum that vibrated through the floorboards. "What is that?" "Oh, fuck," Ben whispered, his voice trembling. "Oh, fuck, Alex. Someone's home." "Forget the keys, Ben. Run." I screamed, grabbing his arm and pulling him up. We bolted, not towards the main track, but deeper into the woods, just past the homestead, where that fainter, overgrown path led. It was overgrown for a reason. Thorny bushes tore at our clothes, branches slapped our faces, but we didn't stop. The metallic, sickly sweet smell was overpowering here, mixed with something else, something fetid and undeniably organic. The ground gave way beneath our feet more than once, sinking into boggy patches. The buzzing was all around us, not just from the farmhouse, but from the very air, vibrating in my teeth. We ran blindly, propelled by sheer, unadulterated fear. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but the thought of that thing, whatever it was, pursuing us, kept me going. Ben, always faster than me, was a few paces ahead, cursing and panting. Then, he let out a choked cry. He'd tripped, badly. I skidded to a halt, turning back. He was trying to push himself up, his ankle twisted at an unnatural angle. A sickening pop had echoed through the quiet woods. "My ankle. I think it's broken, Alex," he gasped, his face pale with pain and terror. And then I saw it. Not the thing from the house, but another. Or a part of it. Hanging from a low branch, swaying gently, was a human hand. Skinned. Delicately preserved. Its fingers were elongated, tipped with sharp, black talons. And just beyond it, partially obscured by the undergrowth, was a crude netting, a ghastly tapestry woven from dried leaves, animal bones, and what looked terrifyingly like braided human hair. Trapped within it, struggling weakly, was a deer, its eyes wide with fear, its body already partially transformed. Patches of its fur were gone, replaced by glistening, raw flesh, and its antlers had begun to twist into those familiar, grotesque star shapes. The buzzing was deafening now, a cacophony of monstrous insects. I realized it wasn't just inside the house. It was everywhere. Millions of them. Not wasps, not flies. Something bigger. Something intelligent. From the trees behind us, a low, wet growl snaked through the air. The silhouette from the farmhouse was closer. And it wasn't alone. 3 of them, maybe 4, were moving through the dense undergrowth, their movements fluid and terrifyingly silent despite their unnatural forms. They were humanoid, but too tall, too gaunt, their skin a sickly gray, stretched taut over bulging muscles and jutting bones. Their heads were misshapen, bulbous, pulsating slightly, and they had no discernible eyes, only dark cavities. But the buzzing, it was emanating from them. Their bodies seemed to be a living hive, the source of the horrific noise. And from their heads, from what should have been their faces, long, segmented proboscises extended, twitching, tasting the air. They were giant, bipedal insects, or something that had been human, and then consumed, transformed. "Get up, Ben. Now!" I screamed, my voice raw. I tried to pull him, but he was dead weight, his face contorted in agony. The creatures were closing in. One of them, the largest, extended a long, slender arm, adorned with the same sharp talons as the hanging hand. It moved with chilling speed, seizing Ben's good leg. He screamed, a high, desperate sound that was immediately stifled as another one of the things clamped a free limb over his mouth. I couldn't move. I was frozen, watching in horror as Ben struggled, his eyes wide, pleading with me. The things surrounded him, their proboscises weaving through the air, their bodies thrumming with that awful buzz. One of them, its bulbous head twitching, brought its own taloned hand down, cleanly severing Ben's injured leg above the ankle. A geyser of blood erupted, soaking the leaf-strewn ground. Ben's scream was muffled, but the pain in his eyes was vivid, horrifying. The creature then did something even more sickening. It lowered its proboscis to the stump, and began to feed. I saw it, clear as day. The appendage burrowed into his flesh, and Ben's body spasmed violently. His eyes rolled back in his head, a single tear cutting a path through the dust on his cheek. The buzzing inside my head intensified, a dizzying spiral of sound and terror. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet, landing hard. The creatures took a collective step forward, no longer rushing, but advancing with a chilling patience. They knew I couldn't escape. Their collective hum seemed to vibrate through the very earth. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't obey. This was it. This was where I became another twisted ornament, another host. But then Ben stirred. His eyes, still unfocused, landed on me. And for a split second, I saw it. A flicker of his old self. His mouth, still covered by the creature's limb, tried to form words. His head shook almost imperceptibly. A desperate, impossible message, run. That was all I needed. The terror was still there, a cold, crushing weight, but Ben's last, impossible gesture had ignited something else. A spark of fury, of desperate, primal survival. I wasn't going to just lie there and let them take me. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the throbbing pain in my knee from the fall. My eyes darted around, searching. The overgrown path. It continued, just barely visible, dipping steeply down into a ravine. It was a leap of faith, a desperate gamble. Hours later, stumbling out of the woods onto a desolate, paved county road, I flagged down a passing pickup truck. The driver, an elderly farmer, took one look at my blood-soaked, torn clothes, my wild eyes, and didn't ask questions. He just drove me to the nearest town, a tiny dot on the map called Havenwood, and dropped me off at the gas station. He probably thought I'd been in a fight, or worse. I didn't correct him. I couldn't. I gave the police a garbled, intentionally vague story about a wrong turn and a car accident, a violent stranger, and running through the woods. They sent a patrol car out to the area I described, but they found nothing. No Civic. No farmhouse. No trace of Ben. Just an ordinary, overgrown dirt track that branched off a county road and disappeared into an unremarkable, unkempt patch of forest. They told me it was probably just a delusion, or I was in shock. They said things like that happen sometimes in the wilderness. Missing persons cases, especially when the person involved was troubled, as they put it. Ben, with his history of minor scrapes with the law, was easy to dismiss. But the real horror, the one that keeps me awake, isn't just the memory of what they did to Ben. It's the whisper in my mind, the knowing certainty that I didn't escape completely. That buzzing, that sensation of something inside my head, it never truly left. It's fainter now, a low hum, a subtle pressure behind my eyes. But sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I swear I can see the outline of those jagged, multi-limbed star symbols, faintly raised on the skin beneath my eyes. And my skin, it feels oddly stretched, and sometimes, when I scratch an itch, I pull away a fingernail and swear I see a tiny, glistening, segmented black speck beneath it. And the worst part? My hunger. Lately, it's not for food. It's for something raw. Something fresh. And sometimes, when alone, I find myself extending my tongue, just slightly, tasting the air. And it tastes sweet. Metallic. Familiar.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah. That's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
I dared my best friend to ruin my life, he's succeeding, by Xan90. My name is Xander, and my best friend is trying to ruin my life. It started out very small, but has quickly grown out of control. 2 years ago, my friend David and I were sitting on the couch at my house thoroughly bored. It wasn't a temporary boredom either. It was a resounding boredom with life. We both worked full-time at the local movie theater making minimum wage and cleaning up after idiots who couldn't keep popcorn and soda in their mouths. We had graduated high school 2 years prior and had no plans to attend college. These life circumstances blended together to create the perfect storm for what I now have to call my reality. As we sat on the couch at my parents' house, channel surfing the TV, David asked me if I was bored with life. I responded in the positive, and he sighed. "Would you go back to high school then?" I asked. He shook his head. In the moment, high school was annoying. It's only after looking back that I see how much better it was than I realized. Either go somewhere that has structure and can deliver what high school gave us, or create our own structure, David replied. "I dare you to try and ruin my life," David said. I remember sitting back and thinking about what he meant. The first thoughts that came to mind were about tripping him occasionally, or hiding his toothbrush every time I went to his house. My young mind didn't fully understand how serious David was being. His mind was running 3 tracks above mine, so I didn't know what I was getting into when I said, "Okay, I'll try to ruin your life. But I dare you to try and ruin my life as well." He smiled with a newfound enthusiasm, and I smiled back. I had hoped it would be a great way to relieve my boredom with life. David stood up and punched me in the leg as hard as he could. I shouted at him, mostly out of surprise. He just laughed. Once he left, I just sat there rubbing my sore thigh. Okay, I thought, if he wants a war, he'll get a war. That night, I had laid awake trying to think of ways to make his life harder for him. My ideas were all so childish and useless compared to what he would later throw at me. I'm too embarrassed to list my ideas from back then. I wish I could say I remembered the day David turned against me for real. But it was so subtle that I didn't notice right away. To my face, David acted completely normal. Out of the blue, my boss called me into his office and told me that I was fired because I wasn't doing a good enough job. David acted sorry I was leaving and we promised to hang out again soon. They confronted me again, this time very angry. They accused me of withdrawing several $100s using my mom's debit card. I have no siblings, so it wouldn't have been anyone else in the house. It turned into a screaming match and they demanded that I move out as quickly as possible. With my small cache of savings, I found an apartment near the local community college that housed college students. The rent was affordable enough for me, so I moved out within the month. One day, I remember feeling sick of getting all this junk mail and deciding to sit down, call every subscription to cancel. I recruited Clark and Ivan to help me, and we sat down with snacks one afternoon and started to crank through phone calls. In a few days, the tide of junk mail subsided and we celebrated our efforts. That only lasted a week. The next week, it started coming back in full force. There was twice as much as before, and even some pornographic magazines in the mix. Not only did my physical junk mail increase, but my email became unnavigable through all the new spam messages. Google moved a lot of it to the spam filter, but there were still hundreds of emails that made it through. My email had been subscribed to websites I'd never even heard of. Clark and Ivan were blown away by the new tide of junk mail. The event was dubbed Return of the Junk and became a great icebreaker for Clark and Ivan to introduce me to other people at parties. A new game became available for pre-order, so I submitted my email to reserve a copy. When I tried to log into my email to make sure the reserve code was there, I couldn't log in. I hit Forgot Password, and it asked if I wanted to use my phone number to reset the password. I pressed yes and waited for my phone to light up. It never did. I pressed the button 3 more times, but no text ever came. I tried old passwords I used to use, but none of them worked. I frowned, but eventually just walked away from my computer. I'd try again a different day. I sat down on the couch and pulled up Facebook on my phone. A pop-up appeared. "You've been signed out," it said. Then it jumped to the login screen. I thought I'd hit the logout button on accident, so I just typed in my email and password. It didn't work. I tried again, but it still told me the password was incorrect. My phone buzzed in my hand. Katie was calling me. I answered it and immediately became concerned. She was sobbing. "You coward," she spat. "You don't get to just Facebook me that shit, no, you have to talk to me and tell me with your voice. Don't play stupid, asshole. Say it. You Facebook me and say we are through, but when I call, you deny everything. What the hell are you trying to pull, Xander?" Katie hissed. "Katie, my Facebook got hacked. I was literally just trying to log in when you called. Are you at home? I'm coming over. We are not done, we are far from done, sweetheart." Katie also found out through her feeds that my Twitter and Instagram had been hacked. The accounts were posting hundreds of crude messages and pictures. Those 2 sites took a little more effort, but eventually I regained control over those 2. Fixing my email took a couple of days, but I got access again. Not wanting to repeat the experience, I made my passwords into really long strings of numbers, letters and symbols. Each account had a different password. For anyone who has done this, you know how impossible it would be to memorize your passwords. I wrote them down on a sheet of paper and put it in my dresser drawer. I didn't intend to get hacked again. I had a desktop, so bringing it down required a lot of unplugging. When I got down behind the computer to unplug everything, I found a tiny USB stick that I'd never seen before. I frowned and tried to locate its contents on the computer. The computer said no USB was attached. The computer repair guy confirmed that the USB drive was a keylogger. He asked if my computer had ever been anywhere that anyone could walk up and use it. I told him no, and he said he had no idea how it could have gotten there. He didn't charge me anything, just warned me to keep an eye on my computer. I changed all my passwords again, going through the motions to get my accounts back. A quick Google search told me what to do next. I called Equifax, which is a company that calculates your credit score and tells creditors that it's okay for you to open a credit account. I placed a 90-day fraud alert on my credit. They said they would call me if anyone tried to open a credit account in my name. Clark was horrified at what had happened and looked at his credit score. He was relieved when it came back clean. I made Katie check hers too just in case. Also clean. 2 weeks after I had called them, my dad called. They found 15 fraudulent accounts between the two of them. What the hell? I told him the steps he needed to take, and he was grateful for my help and warning. I know this is boring to read, but I want you to realize how insanely painful it was to fix all of this shit. Seriously, watch your credit reports and nip identity theft in the bud before it happens to you. I had requested detailed bills from the credit card companies that had issued the fraudulent accounts, and they mailed them to me. The bills were full of online purchases. The accounts had been opened almost a year ago, and in that time the thief had spent $62,000 between all the fraudulent accounts. I was pretty upset that in a full year, I had only just found any credit card bills in the mail. I must have been tossing them with the mountains of junk mail. Now I know that the masses of junk mail were deliberate and calculated so the bills would blend in and hopefully get thrown away. Guys, identity theft is a serious crime and is very damaging to everyone in the economy. And while the theft had been bad, my life was about to get a whole lot worse. My name is Xander, and my best friend is trying to ruin my life. Part 2. Part 3. Part 5. Part 6. Part 8. And NBSP. Series 2.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
On Sunday night, I ended things with Marcus. I sat him down in our kitchen, managed not to cry as I explained that I couldn't see a future between us, and he was fully moved out of our apartment by midnight. I insisted that he didn't have to do that, he could sleep on the couch while looking for a new place. I didn't mind, but he assured me that he would be fine, he could stay with a friend. I even helped him get a couple suitcases in his car. I texted my mother and my close friends to tell them that we'd broken up. Everyone was incredibly supportive, proud of me, sorry that things didn't work out. I fell asleep watching Netflix, slightly sad about the absence of Marcus in our bed, but knowing I had done the right thing. Before I could open my mouth to protest, he put a bottle of syrup next to the plate of pancakes, and began talking about his day. I won't be home until late tonight because something came up at work. Will you be okay? I felt like I was losing my mind. Marcus? I asked earnestly. What are you doing here? Then he looked at me like I was losing my mind. I live here. They were gone. The last time I had texted anyone was, apparently, at 5 p.m. the day before, when I texted my mother about a television show we both like. He looked confused. "You had a dream we broke up, Lena?" She gasped. "Oh, shit. Wow. What's going on?" "Just, all the stuff I've been telling you about for the past few weeks. The work stuff, the honesty stuff, you know. I mean, I had my reservations at first," she explained, "but I think y'all are good for each other. And I mean, you live together. It's tougher than a normal breakup. I just want to make sure you really thought this through." "Okay. Well, you know I'm always here for you, Lena. Let me know if there's anything I can do to make it easier for you." The third breakup was a little tougher than the last two, which apparently had both been dreams. He kept asking me why, trying to reason with me, trying to fix things. "What do you think I've been dishonest about?" he asked me, pleading with his eyes. "Well, you say you have no family, but when I try to ask you more about it, you give me a different answer every time. Once you said that your parents died when you were young and now you're on your own, but then when we were out for drinks a few weeks ago your buddy started talking about the time you tried to set him up with your sister. And speaking of your buddies, how do you know them? Like, where did you all meet? Was it at work? Because, another thing, your job, what even is your job?" He fumbled for answers. I'm in customer service," he eventually said. "I spend most of my day taking calls, helping my coworkers with their projects, attending meetings, that kind of thing." "I did, once. But mystery isn't fun forever. I need somebody I can depend on. And I'm sorry, Marcus, but I don't think it's you." "What about him? Are you two alright? Are you fighting, or something?" "Sorry, Lena, I haven't been checking my phone a lot. If you left a message I haven't listened to it yet." I was getting desperate. "No, it wasn't a message, we talked. As in, I told you things," you replied. "I told you about how I was gonna break up with Marcus. And then later, I called again to tell you how it went." She was alarmed. "You're breaking up with Marcus? Why would you do that? Are you alright?" he quietly asked. He reached for my hand, probably trying to comfort me, but I yanked it away. He looked hurt. "Where is this coming from?" "Thank you, Lena, I appreciate that. I'll pack when I get home from work today. I can go stay with a friend. If it's not too hard to talk about, would you mind telling me why? Why do you think we don't work together?" By now, my speech was well rehearsed. "I feel like I barely know you. We've been dating for 8 months, and you're incredibly handsome and charming. Don't get me wrong, nobody's ever been able to convince me that we should move in together before the 1-year mark in a relationship, before you. But you can be very withholding about your job, and your friends, and your family, and I feel like, even though I know your interests, and we talk a lot, I can't really describe your traits. When people ask me about you, I tell them you're tall, you're funny, you're sweet, but I can't really say much else. And if I can't understand you, after 8 months together, then what are we doing, Marcus?" He thought for a moment. "What traits would you like me to have?" I made a confused expression, and he clarified further. "I mean, what kind of guy are you looking for, anyways? Since clearly I'm not it. I can change." When Marcus got home, we packed, and I sent him on his way. Then, I downed a triple espresso. I was determined to stay up all night, to watch the sun rise on a beautiful Thursday without Marcus in my apartment. I didn't understand what was happening to me, but I knew he always reappeared while I was sleeping. Maybe if I just didn't sleep, I could keep him out for good. There wasn't much I could do while he was sleeping. I laid beside him and gave in to the late hour. Babe, slow down, I'm barely awake. With a sleepy, snuggling motion, he pulled me closer, stroking my hair. Despite everything, it was nice to be held by him. I wasn't lying about him being charming and handsome. Honestly, had it not been for the way he shut down when I asked him personal questions, I think I could have ended up marrying this guy. But I'd made up my mind. And I'm known for my stubbornness. When he let go of me, stretching, going to get his work clothes, I stopped him. Marcus, wait, we need to talk before you go. He turned and looked at me with an adoring smile. Sure, what is it? Oh, babe. I've been meaning to ask you, my job is having a big charity event next week, a formal dinner. Would you be my date? Could be fun. I know I don't talk about the office much, but you could meet my co-workers, wear a pretty dress, let me show you off. He trailed off expectantly. Before the sad face came, the face I was so used to, the face he'd made every time I told him we needed to end things, something else flashed across his eyes. It was too quick to tell, but it almost looked like he was annoyed. Or frustrated. Is there any way we can work this out? He asked, sounding very sincere. I love you, Lena. I need you. I was taken aback by the new tactic. I'm sorry, Marcus, but, no. I don't think we can work this out. What about the dinner? He pleaded. I thought you would like to see my office. Or maybe you want to meet my family. Would you like that? I decided to cut the bullshit. What's going on here? You know that's not what I'm talking about. He continued to pretend he didn't understand my implications. What are you talking about, then? It didn't work. Again, just after 3, he magically reappeared in my bed, and his belongings reappeared in my apartment. I groaned into my pillow, frustrated, and held my face there for a moment. Just then, barely above a whisper, I heard a voice in my ear. You called that many people? Seriously? Do you have any idea how difficult you're making this for me? I threw the pillow aside, looking around my bedroom, but the only person there was Marcus, still snoring softly by my side. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I felt like I was losing my mind, but also firmly knew that I wasn't. Something was happening, and Marcus was doing it, but how could he be pulling the strings when he was asleep? I tried to wake him up, to settle this as soon as possible, but as if drugged, no matter how I yelled, poked, or pushed, he remained unconscious, or at the very least, he excellently impersonated a sleeping person. I gave in and slept beside him, yet again. I tried printing screenshots of my text messages, hiding them, hiding something of his to see if it would still be reset the next day. I cut his work clothes into ribbons, I called the cops on him, I keyed his car, I threw his phone in the toilet, I bit him, I was looking for a line, something he couldn't reset. I didn't find one. After a while, it stopped being frustrating and started being fun. I know that sounds sick. But it's not like I was trapped in some time loop. The days went by. Everything I did or said apart from Marcus carried over. It was just Marcus that reset. I started to have almost as much fun breaking up with him as I had being in love with him. If you could do whatever you wanted to someone every single day, and still know you'd wake up in bed next to them, with them doting on you, fully in love, who's to say you wouldn't do the same things I did? It was exhilarating. And it's not like I went too far. I never killed him. I never destroyed anything that wasn't his. I just learned how to have fun in my new situation. And it was fun, once I was over the hump of initial paranoia. When Marcus and I had been dating for 10 months, and breaking up for 2, I decided to work harder for answers. I thought he might be more receptive now than in the early days, now that I was more or less playing along with his resets. In the morning, instead of insisting that I'd broken up with him the day before, I'd let him cook for me, or kiss me, and then I'd bring up the idea of the breakup as if it was something totally new. He reacted differently most times, keeping me guessing. It was like a game. Some days, if I was feeling really nice, I didn't break up with him until late at night, so he only had to wait an hour or two before coming back to bed. I tried a different approach. Come on, Marcus, you can talk to me. I thought we'd been having fun together the past couple of months. He snorted. It could have been a sleep noise, but sounded much more like a stifled laugh. I took the chance to dig in. Oh, you think that's funny? You're not having fun with our new routine. Sure, I replied, but what are you? He thought about it. Someone who wants to be with you so badly that they're willing to put in a lot of work for it. He laid silently for another beat, thinking, then sighed. I guess I can always wipe your memory later. I tilted my head. Like you've been doing to my friends? Marcus nodded. You're a special girl, Lena. You're worth a lot to me. You're very different from other humans, people. You know that, right? You're stubborn, but I'm more stubborn. And you didn't let my games drive you insane. You hardly even doubted yourself. You reached the conclusion, all by yourself, that you can do whatever you want to me, and it'll reset overnight. You're studying me. It's impressive, honestly. And it's only fair, I've been studying you, too, making sure you're who I thought you were. I swallowed. I'd never heard him talk like this. And, who am I? It's difficult to explain. He said. My job, my real job, Lena, is to eat. Not people, don't look at me like that. Energy. It sustains me. And you have a certain type, a type that's irresistible to individuals like me. It's delicious, it's sustaining, it's incredibly rare. That's why I kept you away from my family. They might want you for themselves. But I need you for myself. For your entire natural lifetime. I would say, as long as you'll have me, but clearly, even if you try to end things, you're not getting rid of me. I like you too much. Your dinner and a show, Lena. You keep me on my toes. I didn't know a human could do that anymore. And your meals. My energy. That you're eating. Does that do anything to me? Anything bad? That's what's so great about you, Lena. No matter how much I eat, you regenerate it almost instantaneously. You're like a nuclear power plant. And if this scares you, just tell me now, and I'll wipe your slate clean, and you can break up with me again in the morning, like always. I didn't think you were. That's another thing that makes you so special, Lena.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
There's only 5 of us on this camping trip. We keep counting 6, by not necessarily. There were bright flashes of red in the sky. It's as if someone was waving around a flare light from space, faint but noticeable. We all made UFO jokes and laughed as we nailed our tents into the ground. I knew for sure that there were 5 of us. We have all been friends since early middle school and were celebrating our high school graduation with this getaway camping trip. The flashes of red must have stopped randomly as we made conversation while fixing up our tents. Dave managed to put his tent together the fastest and told us he was going to find some branches for the fire. I remember how he had worked with me at the local gas station last year. We used to do the night shift together and it had made working at a desolate gas station much more fun than it was supposed to be. There was also Eric in the corner still reading his tent manual, fidgeting with his signature round glasses. I wasn't as close with Eric as I was with the others, but I still remember sitting with him in math class and copying his homework one time. Ava was also there talking with Sally, my cousin. Both had decided to team up and work on one tent at a time. I also have clear memories of them, hanging around at school in our usual places. In fact, I even knew Ava's younger brother as he used to beg to go with us wherever we went. I bring all this up because I'm sure that there were 5 of us including me and that I knew everyone in the group. We had set up 5 chairs around the fire. I tried to rationalize the situation, but no matter how hard I focused, my head felt like it was underwater. I had perfect clarity up until that moment, but when I tried to focus on why 5 chairs were occupied when Dave hadn't sat down yet, my head seemed to just stop working, as if something was reaching in and pulling out my thoughts. Instinctually, I felt even more uneasy now, and I had placed why. I looked around at the faces of the others and could tell that they had felt the same. Eric was fidgeting with his fingers, trying to scan around the group and spot the extra person, but it was futile. I scanned every face, each etched in worry and frowning in frustration except for. "It's all right, I'll get the chair myself," Dave said, breaking the silence and somewhat alleviating the tension. I got up and offered to help him. He looked into my eyes and nodded knowingly. We headed away from the fire pit towards the tents, but I kept my eyes glued on our group. "No, I just think maybe one of us forgot our chair," I said. My mind was struggling to address the issue head-on and now sought to find rational excuses instead. I didn't quite feel in control of my thoughts. It felt like swimming in a dream, and if I tried to force myself to think about who the 6th person was, my head would begin to throb. "Yeah, that sounds about right actually," Dave said, relaxing and heading back to the group. We all moved closer to the crackling fire for warmth as we took sips from our cans and reminisced on memories of last year. Ava was in the middle of telling us about that one time she was home alone with weird things happening in her house when I got these sudden chills despite the pleasant warmth of the fire. What felt cozy and safe moments ago felt wrong now, all because I realized that there was a crucial detail I missed. "Wasn't it you, Dave?" Eric asked. "Yeah, I think we should stay the night and leave as soon as we can tomorrow," Eric agreed. Following this conversation, we all got up and made our pairs. I went with Dave and Sally, like always went with Ava. Eric kept complaining that he didn't have a pair, but we reassured him he did. He wouldn't accept it. I feel like at some point we all realized that there were only 5 of us, and suddenly we were all huddling up in the middle of the clearing. "Why do we keep thinking there are 6 of us here?" Eric asked. Sweat was dripping down his face despite the cold. We had nearly left him all alone on his own under the assumption that there was another person. My stomach turned as I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to mentally recap everyone here. My head throbbed, but I kept pushing it. "There's me, Dave, Eric, Ava, Sally and..." I was pointing at each of them as I said the name. I retched and emptied the contents of my stomach on the ground when I got past Sally. The left side of my head felt like there was a knife stuck in it. My vision was blurry. Dave held me up to stop me from collapsing, and we all wordlessly started to move towards the tents as someone put the fire out. Dave helped me into a tent while the 4 outside discussed what to do. I could only focus on snippets of the conversation as the excruciating pain beating against my skull came and went in waves. Sally had the brilliant idea of arranging 3 tents together so their openings faced together at right angles in a sort of U shape so we could sleep as close as possible and also limit the entrance to our tents. Dave was about to go to help as they worked outside, but I clutched his hand and asked him to stay with me. Despite the circumstances, sleep came quickly and easily. Ava's shrill scream woke me up in the middle of the night. Dave and I ripped our tent door open to find Sally and Ava looking into Eric's tent. We pushed them aside. Eric's sleeping bag was rolled up. He was still inside it. His head in the center, face contorted in utter agony. The rest of his body rolled around it with the blue fabric now dripping with dark blood. Dave zipped up the door of the tent. Ava was in shock. Her eyes had become glassy and unfocused. Sally was shaking her repeatedly, tears streaming down her face. Dave picked up his torch and yelled at us to get up and run. We left the campsite behind and entered the trail we had come from. The 5 of us huddled together, Dave leading in the front as he cast his weak flashlight over the path so we could see it. All we had to help us get through this 2-hour trail was a small white circle of light. Even the moon failed to illuminate our surroundings through the dense foliage. Ava tripped and fell, twisting her ankle. We came to a stop. Someone said they knew how to splint it so we could keep going. They dragged her into the woods instead. It happened too quickly for any of us to process. Sally was about to run after Ava when Dave held her back. She struggled and managed to free herself, running into the trees to follow the echoes of Ava's screams. I was about to run after her, but Dave held me by the shoulders and shook me hard. "We need to get out of here, Jenny, please," he said. I hesitated but jolted into motion again when Sally's voice was cut off abruptly. She had been calling out Ava's name as she ran after her. Dave and I continued to run down the trail, trying to get to our car so we could get out of here. There was nothing we could do. At some point there were 3 of us running on the trail, Dave and I shoulder to shoulder, while someone followed us closely behind. "Dave, who's behind us?" I gasped. My heart was threatening to burst through my ribcage and my legs burned. He turned to look at me. Confusion transformed into fear on his face and then into rage. 10.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
Everyone has that bitch in her life. Dr. Vivian Scritt was that bitch. For just a moment, after J.D. burst into the morgue, I thought that she would freeze in place. He meant to convey the universally accepted definition of each word as it fits into an English language sentence. Dr. Athelis, Dr. Scritt snapped as we ran after J.D. Despite what you learned in kindergarten, there are stupid questions, and they're distributed unequally across a population of individuals who remind us that free speech is an unfortunate reality. That bitch. I don't know what was happening in the room beyond. But it sounded like a subterranean giant had forced a colossal fart through 8 feet of mud, and smelled twice as bad. Dr. Brutzen had looked bad when he was lying dead, but he was so much worse now. He was standing, facing away from us, swinging angry fists at anyone who approached. I could not see the back of his head, because his neck had twisted to drop his skull into the 6 o'clock position. Brutzen's body was severely damaged. He swung back and forth, unable to establish stable footing due to his shattered spine. Bony protrusions stuck through his skin, and the destroyed remains of what had once been his vertebrae no longer created a vertical line. The analytical part of my brain understood that she had died before she hit the floor. Dr. Dorian, on my left. Dr. Scritt yelled over Brutzen's growling. "I see Dr. Dorian wants to learn one of our rules the hard way," she heaved before turning to glare at me sideways. "Dr. Athelis, this has to happen now, so listen very carefully. When life gives you lemons, fuck it." Lydia jumped into action, clasping his wrists and pushing him back. For a moment, Brutzen was still. Then a guttural roar shook the walls, and his shaking told me that he would soon overpower his 2 captors. I turned away from them and reached for the cabinet. I had both hands on the handles when I saw it on the door. 1913. And this time I definitely remembered the rules. Brutzen screamed. I didn't move. "Only you can see what's in front of you right now, Dr. Athelis, but there comes a time when you have to make the decision that you'll most be able to live with, and you don't have time to think." I breathed deeply. He licked his lips with a blackened tongue. "Why did you leave me, Ellie?" I froze. Dr. Athelis. We need you, now. You've only come back because you need something from me, is that right, Ellie? My brother's corpse asked. I sobbed. Lydia screamed, and the sickening sound of breaking bone echoed throughout the room. Why didn't you come in time to save me, Ellie? Why are you here now? He clutched it tighter. But why didn't you need me? Time is almost up, Doctor. I'm so sorry, Timmy, I sobbed. I didn't want to leave you. I know you don't understand, but please tell me that you know I love you. The tears rained down uncontrollably. How? He responded sadly. How can I know that you loved me if you left me to die? I'm going to take this, Timmy, but I love you so much. I'm your favorite big sister, remember? No, I whispered sadly as I plucked the syringe from his weak grasp. Then I turned away from the ghost of my little brother, and I ran to the place where I could make a difference. The emotional part of my soul had worn so thin that no veneer was left. Only a time-worn, rocky edge of logic remained as I acted efficiently to complete the task in front of me. Then I crashed to the ground. Then he coughed, spraying blood across the floor, and leaned forward. His eyeball fell like a dropped marble. It was followed by viscous gray sludge that I presumed to be his quickly dissolving brain. I didn't think I'd be able to pry myself away from the sight in front of me. And suddenly, I was able to do the impossible. The next several minutes were blurry. Dr. Scrit did a lot of yelling, and we were suddenly surrounded by people willing to help. I wondered, vaguely, where they had been in those precious seconds when we needed them most. There are certain soul-defining moments, I think, that can only ever be experienced alone. Dr. Athelis, you need to come with me. Dr. Scrit's voice was calm and forceful. I can't, my brother's in the closet, I mumbled before a wave of emotion silenced me. No, Dr. Athelis, he isn't. I have to go back, I squeaked. Then I stood. Dazedly, I moved until I found myself sitting across her desk for the second time that night. She nodded to herself. We need to do this quickly, and I won't repeat myself, so listen carefully. She cleared her throat. The time has come, Dr. Athelis, to tell you about rule number 7. BD. Part 6.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
If you see a woman with a serrated smile, you need to read this as a matter of life and death, by Bourne Beach. I'm a government employee. My name isn't important. All you need to worry about is what I have to say. In this case though, I don't think I have a choice. Backslash 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 backslash. I asked the man to tell me his story, and it begins. It happened at the cabin, he says. He's 20-something, with a long nose and 5 o'clock shadow. When he reaches for his cigarette, his hand shakes like a 1950s pickup truck. Not my cabin, he adds. It belonged to Emily, but she invited us up. The 3 of us. The cameras, he says. What's the deal with them? You said you weren't a cop. I'm not, I reassure him. The cameras are for my own records. Events, encounters with the paranormal, they're tricky things. Sometimes we catch items in recordings we'd otherwise miss in person. He stares at me a while. His lip curls in, his teeth gnawing at it. It's a look I've seen before, the sort of look where he's wondering if maybe he's being played. He's wondering if this is a sting operation, and he's taking the bait and I'm going to have him thrown into a psych ward, or worse. It's better if you tell me everything, I say, placing my clipboard on the desk between us. I'm not here to have you put away, only to get some answers. A moment of dead air hangs between us, and it's the sort of moment I recognize. He's weighing the situation. Sizing me up. He's wondering if he's comfortable talking about something this batshit insane to a total stranger. Sure, he says. He taps on a finger on the desk. Gathers his thoughts. It happened late at night. The four of us had been drinking in the cabin, doing mushrooms, but we all slept outside in tents since the place was full of spiders. Hardly ever got used. I tilt my head to the side, inviting him to continue. The cabin belonged to Emily's mom, he explains. She passed away when Em was a little girl, and the place has been a mausoleum ever since. Em thinks it has bad mojo. What do you think? What do I think? He tastes the question. I think that. He trails off, his eyes losing focus, gazing at the splintered wooden table between us. Suddenly, he seems far away. There's an emptiness to his expression. A disconnect. I wonder if he's thinking of legends and nightmares. Is everything all right? I ask. It's private. Your knowledge of my notes could influence your account. I'd prefer it if such biases were avoided. His face creases, jaw clenches. He looks angry as he sits back in his chair. Pissed. He's gnawing at his lips again, and his fingers tapping the table like a Gatling gun. There's no doubt in my mind that this guy's been through a lot, but I need to make sure he's telling the truth, and in order to do that, he can't know anything. Nothing at all. Fine, he says at length. We'll do it your way. Like I said, we were drinking in the cabin. Swapping old war stories from high school. Talking about stupid pranks we'd pull, or places we'd tagged, or teachers we hated. We reflected. Pretty soon though, we got drunk enough that stuff went deeper. We stopped talking about all the silly surface bullshit, and we started talking about the stuff that really meant something to us, the things that set our souls on fire. That's a poetic turn of phrase. Are you a writer? I smile. Sure. Go ahead. I lift an eyebrow. She watched her brother drown. He nods. She was 3 years old. She didn't understand what was happening, not really. There wasn't anything she could do. I see. It's a sad story, but not really what I came here for. Worse still, nothing yet matches the jagged Janus legend. Anything else? I'm not here for Emily's story, I'm here for yours. You'll excuse me if I forget to feign empathy for a woman I've never met. I check a box labeled confrontational and rest my pen on my clipboard. Now then, you said you were drinking. Talking. What happened after that? His jaw is set. Clenched. He looks like he wants to slug me in the face, and honestly, I wouldn't blame him, but instead he takes a drag on his cigarette and leans back in his chair. We drink and talk until our eyes get droopy, he says. And then we go to bed. It's like any night, I guess. Up until a point. He scratches the back of his head, brows furrowed. There's a picture being painted in his mind, colored by memories. It's a T-shaped cabin. Capital T. There's 2 bedrooms on either side of the T, and at the very top center is a bathroom. The bottom of the T is the living area and kitchen, then the front door. Simple enough. I make a quick sketch of it on my form. According to the report, the event occurred in the washroom. I'd like you to talk about that. Let me, I offer. No, he says. I've got it. The lighter strikes, and a flame dances to life. He hovers it below his dart until an ember glows. Then the man leans back, takes a deep drag, and blows out a storm cloud. You're the real deal, huh? I'm sorry. The real deal. You actually believe me, don't you? Promising. The man pauses. Sweat beads down his forehead. Sorry, he says. I just haven't thought about it in this much detail since the night it happened. Okay. He gives himself a minute. Catches his breath. Like I said, I don't feel safe in there, but I'm drunk enough that it doesn't faze me. I've still got a buzz going from earlier in the night, you know. I think to myself, I came to take a shit and some spooky shadows aren't gonna stop me. He chuckles to himself, shakes his head. But a few seconds later, I'm in the bathroom and locking the door behind me. I figure, why take the chance? He's nervous. Jittery. His legs bouncing up and down and shaking the table. It's beginning to affect my ability to write. Would you like a glass of water? I ask. I've seen those. Is that where you witnessed the event? That's where I saw the smile. He looks down, and his eyes drift out of focus. The smile is just a row of teeth. But the teeth are too big and too sharp to belong to a human, and there are just so many of them. I check my notes, consulting descriptions of jagged Janus listed in old email chains from the early 2000s. I'd like to hear more about these teeth. No, he says, shaking his head. Or, I don't know. I can't remember small details. He pauses, and reaches for his glass of water before taking another gulp. At that point my body's mostly just adrenaline. There's a storm of it coursing through me and screaming at me to run or scream or fight this bitch or just do something. Anything. But I can't. I just stand there, staring at her inhuman teeth, at her horrible, twisted smile with my phone clutched to my chest like a crucifix. I stay still. Still as I can, like I'm fucking paralyzed. There's no light in the room, none except the bits of moon framing the monster in the window, so I let myself meld into the darkness. I don't move an inch, and I pray to God the creature can't see me there. He shivers, reaches for his cigarette and takes a drag. I lean forward, my interest piqued. Much of his description could have been pulled from the jagged Janus legend itself. The small black pupils. The rows of inhuman teeth. I check off the features on my clipboard as he goes. What does she do? I ask. When you lock eyes with her? He swallows. She speaks. What does she say? She says, he stammers. I see you. Her fingers reach up, and she taps the glass again. Tap. 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 I chance another look, and all I can see is her terrible, serrated smile in the window. It's making me feel nauseous. I've never been that scared, you know. I close my eyes, wanting the feeling to go away for just a second, but when I open them again the smile's gone. It's just me, alone in the bathroom. He puts his face in his hands and lets the armor fall away. His shoulders quake with silent sobs. I give him a minute, then another. No response. It becomes apparent that his account has reached its conclusion. My heart thrums as I pull back my handshake. A smile slips across my face as I sit back down in my chair, centering my clipboard in front of me. Something else occurred. X.X.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
My father only hit me one time. Open palm across my jaw when I was 7. Once in my life. Been 40 years, but I can still feel it. The sound of the slap, the sting, and the shock. I'm sitting now right where it happened. At the window, halfway up the stairs of my childhood home. My brother's not long gone. He had a lot to say tonight, which ain't like him. Left me with a lot to think about. Unexpected truth can do that. Every family got a strange habit or two they think is normal. All thinking nothing of it until they grow up and realize it was out of the ordinary. For us, my sisters and brother and I, it was the rain. Whenever it came down, we all had to get inside and sit in the living room together. Every time, no exceptions. Mom and the 4 kids. My father locked all the doors, not a word spoken, then stood at the kitchen window staring out. Always watching the same spot too, a fenced-off field to the north, maybe 500 yards from the house. Most of the time, few minutes would pass, he would sigh and say, "All right." Then we could all go back about our business as if nothing had happened. We were all out in town when it got to raining and everyone just continued on as if nothing had happened. I remember how confused I was, waiting at the doors to the nearest shop in a near panic. My mother, leaning down to whisper so Noon would hear, said, "That's only for at home honey, okay?" We lived on what had once been a farm, one of the biggest in the county. My grandparents on my father's side had owned it since they married. Never could find out who they bought it from. The land was, and still is, incredibly fertile. That's how my family made its money, 50 years of selling livestock and produce at a rate you wouldn't believe. So my parents moved in. They had been desperate for children for years, especially my mother, without any luck. Then within a month of moving to the farm, she fell pregnant with my brother, John. And that was that. They took to looking after the land, making a living off of selling the fruit and vegetables that were still growing there. Then a new child every year. I was the last. John, Susie, Sylvia and me, Austin. It was late November, few days before my 8th birthday when it happened. I woke because I needed to go to the toilet. I slipped down off my mother's knee and saw my father had also fallen asleep. First and only time it happened. I walked to the window. In the memory, the world seems very far away, like I was walking in a dream. I looked out through the glass, through the sheets of rain across the darkened fields. There was something out there, in the shadows of the clouds. It saw me. I didn't wake for almost a day. For weeks after I would wake in the night, shaking and screaming. When my sisters asked me what I had dreamt about, I could never tell them. In all honesty, I didn't know. All that was left was that call, that pulling inside and the feeling of being watched. My brother took a turn to sit with me one night, until I could get back to sleep. I remember him asking me, "Why did you do it, Austin?" "I had to pee, John." The next year was when we lost my mother. My sisters and I were away north, spending the week with our Aunt Amelia and her kids. My brother had stayed with our parents to work on the farm. Neither him or my father would ever talk about what happened, not clearly anyhow. We never saw her again. I had this memory of her, sitting with me, stuck in a loop in my head. We would have conversations in my imagination, I would daydream into them over and over. Then snap awake, back to the reality around me, and realize she was still gone. I started waking in the night crying again, but now no one came to sit with me. They had their own nightmares. They'll know. Not to leave the house. Even if I'm not there. Your sisters and brother will know. We hammered over boulders and across ditches, old car shaking so much I near fell out the seat. I remember seeing a drop of rain on the windscreen. Nothing. But he slammed on the brakes. I felt the car fishtail, seatbelt cut into my neck and choked the breath out of me. My father had gone deathly white. He pulled off his coat and threw it over my head, plunging me into darkness. I could hear the rain now, on the roof and the glass. The wind shook the car. Something started to scrape slow down the side of the car. Something sharp. Tap tap tap. On the glass, just inches from me. Tap tap tap. He took his hand from my back and shifted, I guess to get a better hold on the barrel. A lighter scratching on the glass, something sliding down, then the rattle of the handle. Then it stopped. He died a few years later. It was raining heavy one morning, my sister and I were in the living room and we both fell asleep to the sound. He just got up and walked out into it with his shotgun. My brother called me here this morning, told me this story again from his side. The truth of it, or as much as he got from Dad. The family had always known about what came with the rain. They never gave it a name, never talked about the details of what they saw. Came with the land, like a deal you signed up to by living here. Who knows when it began? What it really was. Sometimes it came, sometimes it didn't. If the rain didn't touch you it was no problem. Through tears he told me about seeing our mother taken. Windows smashed, rain washed in across her and she was gone, he said. It took her, Austin. Remembering that open gate, blurred by rain. That tapping on the glass of the car window. There's a storm coming.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
I've had my dog since the day I was born, all 31 years. Yeah, I know it sounds impossible to you. Last night he passed away, and 4 hours later, a group of people showed up in my yard, by Aeneas. He was the best dog in the world, and I know everyone says that about their animal, but mine really was. He never left my side, and I took him everywhere I could. I even brought him to the US when I moved here from Montenegro. Some of my ex-girlfriends weren't thrilled that I was so close with Snoop, but since he's been my buddy from the day I entered this world, he was always my priority. Not only was Snoop always available for infinite cuddles and 24/7 game of fetch, but he also got me out of few strange situations. When I got to the river, it was getting pretty dark. I got close to the water to see if I could gauge how deep it was, and I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw this, maybe 11 or 12-year-old little girl standing behind me. She was kind of out of place looking, wearing a nice black dress in the middle of woods. I asked her if she was lost and she told me that she was. Apparently she wandered away from her parents' tent. So I helped her look, basically just following her around the forest. Just when I started thinking that I may end up having to call forest rangers, she turned to me with a smile and said that she could see her family tent in the distance. Snoop stood some 5 feet away, whining and looking very disturbed. I've never seen him act like that. I stepped out of the tent and as I walked towards Snoop, I heard the man yell for me to come back inside. I still chose my dog, as I always do. When I kneeled by Snoop, I thought it was weird that I couldn't hear a thing coming from the tent, or that none of them would come out. All of this was a bit too much for me, so I just yelled that I had to go back to my camp, and my dog and I left. Snoop started wagging his tail as soon as we were walking away, and I was happy that my best friend was cheerful once again. I don't know much about cars, but I felt inclined to help, so I pulled over. Snoop became very restless, jumping from seat to the floor and back. I told him to relax and got out of the car, leaving him inside. When I turned my attention back to the girl, I was really surprised to see her driving away, with hood still lifted and smoke still coming out of it. I thought, I guess she fixed it. Whatever, I didn't give it much thought, really. I just picked up my flares and got back into the car, with Snoop wagging his tail right next to me. Finally, and I'm starting to notice a pattern here now that I write this, last strange situation I can remember happened about a year ago. Snoop was feeling a bit under the weather. I mean, he was almost 30 after all, so we were just hanging out in our front yard. We live in a quiet suburb where nothing happens. Kids were riding bikes on the street while my best bud and I relaxed by the blow-up pool in the yard. I heard a loud crash followed by crying coming from the street. When I looked up, I saw a kid crying by his bike. I walked out on the street, leaving Snoop in the yard since he wasn't feeling well. He was whining, but I wanted to quickly check on the kid. I asked the boy if he was okay and he rolled up his black pants to show me his bleeding knee, and I saw that his dark shirt was also torn up in few places. He asked me if I could take him home, which was just around the corner. Of course I could. I walked with him, and when we got in front of his house, he asked me to come in. I'm not the one to enter strangers' houses, especially with a kid, so I thanked him and started walking away. Then, the door opened and his mom came out. She was dressed in a black dress and accompanied by a very nice smile and warm, inviting face. She begged me to come in and have some freshly made lemonade, her way of thanking me for helping her kid. I was reluctant, but I caved in. She seemed so nice. As I was climbing the steps to the door, I heard loud barking behind me. I turned around and saw Snoop standing in the street. He almost never barked. It was strange because my fence was at least 4 feet tall and my dog could never jump over it. Then I saw that his belly was bleeding, all scraped from what I figure was him jumping over the fence I always thought was too high for him. As I started walking towards him, the kid grabbed my hand. He asked me again to come in, followed by his mom, who was now basically begging me to come in and try her fresh lemonade. Once again, I chose my buddy over strangers, so I apologized, let go of kid's hand, and walked my hurt buddy home as the door slammed behind us. Snoop was so happy, even though he was hurt. On his grave, right in my yard, stood some 12, 13 people. They were all looking up, straight at me. You never expect to see someone standing in your front yard in the middle of the night, especially not 13 people, all dressed in black. He then yelled at me to come on out. Everyone else started motioning for me to come down, the kid and his mom smiling, the broken car girl combing her hair and sending kisses, the camping family waving. They all wore the same clothes I remembered them wearing in the past. 7 or so minutes of dreadful silence later, police car showed up. They didn't see anyone in the yard, but promised to keep looking around the neighborhood. I told them to go to the lady down the street's house, and they said they would. I haven't heard anything from them yet, and it's 11 a.m. I can see lots of footprints in the grass of my yard, so this definitely isn't some grief-caused hallucination.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
The first wave was probably more experimental and not expected to succeed. They're obvious to spot. They come running, screaming. They wear metallic jumpsuits, are hairless, and wield big military knives. Dad's gotten good at shooting them before they get within 100 feet of us. The second wave still doesn't have any hair. But they wear mismatched thrift store clothes. Stuff that's been out of fashion for several years. They're easy to mistake for hipsters, especially if they're wearing hats to cover their bald heads. They don't scream as they come at me. They do walk with a purpose, as Dad says though. A few of them have gotten close enough that I've seen their rotting teeth. Either something terrible happens to dentists in the future or time travel does something to your teeth. My dad's a dentist. At least he was before all this. We live on the road. I'm too young to drive, so I read or invent games. The back seat is filled with library books we've stolen across the country. I have 2 of the same book. One's old and the other's brand new. The old one has lots of notes in it. The other had none when I found it. One game I like to play is to copy all the notes from the older copy into the newer one. It's no Minecraft, but it passes the time between time travelers attempting to murder me. We found out his true intention when we were halfway through Iowa. He was waiting for us at a gas station in a nowhere town. He carried 2 Ruger Super Redhawks, some huge .454 Casull handguns. He tried to dual-wield them like a character out of a John Woo movie. One of his bullets hit our car. The other went stray. He was knocked back by the recoil. It gave Dad enough time to get his rifle, aim, and hit him once in the forehead. We drove off, stole another vehicle, and were out of state before sundown. Like the time he asked us if we'd purposefully kill one person to save 5 people tied to railroad tracks, the class was fiercely divided. About half said they'd go back and kill baby Hitler. The other half said it's wrong to kill an infant who hasn't done anything yet. Both sides made sense to me. Now when I think of that question I cry. Not for myself, so much. I mean, I guess I do. But more so because I miss sitting in Mr. Norris' class arguing stuff like that. And I miss the monotony. The 4th wave are the most dangerous. Dad calls them sleepers. They land in the past, sometimes years before I've even been born, and they live normal lives. They know someday they might encounter me. Should that day ever come, they're prepared to do what's necessary. I made a prototype of my machine. It was the size of a microwave. Looked a lot like one too. I took a bullet, a .38 special, and put it inside. I set the machine for 10 years from now. It disappeared. I destroyed the prototype and scattered the parts across the junkyard. The 5th wave was a single person. She was old woman, and I didn't recognize her at first. My face had changed so much. But she still had my eyes. I met her only once years ago. She didn't try to kill me. Out there, on that sunny day, she told me about a bullet she'd found in a junkyard 10 years after she'd sent it into the future. About how she built a bigger and greater machine after her father was murdered by a person with hair black as sin. I told him everything that she'd said, and he thought I was joking.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
I would have done a nude air dry after getting home, but home was the back seat of my car this week. I really didn't want to explain to the cops a second time that I wasn't masturbating in my blue-green Toyota Corolla, but was just trying to get a breeze on my taint. This guy was neither. With a black fedora and a black trench coat flanking a long, gray face, he would have been goth chic if he weren't 30 years past teenagerhood. Knock knock knock, Raymond Salak, he called through the glass. I always keep my car window rolled up. I used to leave it open a crack so that I could breathe, but some asshole slid a coat hanger through the gap one time and unlocked the door, leaving me with a broken nose so that he could steal 19 dimes and 13 pennies from my dash. Call me Advocatus, he smiled without happiness. Why don't you roll down your window so that we can chat? Or, better yet, why don't you come on out of the car? I climbed out of the car and remembered that my key was inside as I was closing it. I didn't scream or yell, I just sighed and leaned against the door, feeling very forgotten. Mr. Salak, I'm here to tell you that you have not been forgotten, he explained in a deep, nasally voice as he folded his hands over his briefcase handle. If you think I haven't been forgotten, Then you've got the wrong Raymond Salak, I mumbled as I rubbed my eyes. The wrong Raymond Salak from Brunswick, Maine, who is currently attending Bowdoin College on an academic scholarship that doesn't cover the housing he hasn't been able to afford since both of his parents died in a car crash last year. Advocatus pressed calmly. I tried to think about where I might go. That's great. You must not know about your great-aunt Mary, to whom you're the only living relative. You just inherited her mansion. He opened his briefcase and handed me a folder. Oh, I said as I took it from him. And you're sure that I'm the correct Raymond Salak in a 1999 blue-green Toyota Corolla? Mr. Advocatus slowly looked up the street, then turned and looked down the other way. Tell you what. If a second one of you comes along, you two can split the inheritance evenly. I looked down at the mansion nestled up against the Androscoggin River. It somehow settled warmly into the surrounding environs while sharply declaring its carefully planned New England starkness to all who passed by. Well, you have to pay an inheritance tax. Fortunately, the trust fund covers that amount, with exactly enough left over earmarked for 20 years' worth of property tax, he explained matter-of-factly. Ah, I responded. Oh, God damn it, I shot back. Are you kidding me? I knew there was a catch. Is this house supposed to be haunted? Is that it? Will bad things happen if I break one of the rules? I was breathing heavily, so I forced myself to calm down. Look, I'm sorry. It's just a lot, you know. Mr. Salak. He tossed me the Corolla keys. Follow the rules. Things may surprise you. I thought that claiming the biggest bedroom would make me happiest, but it just highlighted how few possessions I had when a pile of books and dirty clothes fought against the emptiness. But I'd already hauled a stack of logs to the fireplace and dragged a mattress into the otherwise barren room, so I decided to settle in. Do you know what you imagine is nearby when nothing is nearby? The emptiness of the room grew large as I huddled closer to the fire, realizing for the first time that I had no idea if I even had central heat or electricity. Why did a closet on the third story need a lock on the outside? What was the purpose of a window that led straight to an interior brick chimney? My eyes wandered to my pocket. I dismissed it at first, but where else did I have to turn? 2. Knock on every door of the second story at least once a day. That keeps curious hands on the other side. 3. Avoid the blue room at the end of the third floor hall. If you must go in, keep your eyes pointed downward the entire time, no matter what you hear. And I put out the fire. Then I went to bed, because this day had been wild enough for an entire year, and I wanted to enjoy my mansion without giving myself a heart attack. The room was much quieter than I was used to as I tried to fall asleep. And it was much darker without streetlights illuminating the inside of my car while I drifted off. I wrapped my arms around my ears and closed my eyes. Creak. Step. Creak. Step. Creak. Step. Creak. I should have known this house came with a cost. The air pressure changed just slightly, as though someone were standing over me. I kept my eyes closed despite the darkness. Fear is nothing but imagination run amok. Right? I didn't move. Cold air caressed my face in the exact cadence of human breath. Something huffed, and a burst of cold air rushed over my face. Silence. Right. So here's the thing, you might be scary, but you're dead, and this is my house now. My heart was beating hard enough to threaten my eardrums. So we're all going to have to learn to coexist. Because whatever crazy shit you have in store is worth the cost of rent, which is nothing. Get it? I was panting in fear, but determined to finish. A light burst of air whispered past my ear. I could have sworn it was confused. Bitch, it means that now I'm haunting you. I dropped back down to the mattress and wrapped my arms around my ears once more. So learn to live with it, or whatever it is you do. Tomorrow we can draft a new list of rules, because things are going to be different around here. Good night. Watch.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
I was jolted back to consciousness by a violent coughing fit caused by the unnaturally dry air around me. Drops of sweat had piled up, and started trickling down my forehead. It was dark, not a single ray of light to even make out my closest surroundings. My memory served little help in recognizing my whereabouts, but upon fumbling around with my weak hands, I noticed I was sitting in a fabric-coated chair in a room that seemed to vibrate ever so slightly. It was a train compartment, and the train was still moving, though seemingly rid of any other people. I tried to get up, but my legs refused to properly cooperate. They were too weak, as if they hadn't been used for days. Then some of my memories returned. I was traveling. I remembered getting on the train, though I hadn't the faintest idea what my destination should have been. My memory simply cut short after stepping inside my empty compartment. That had been November 12th. I checked my pockets to look for clues. I found my phone, which had long since ran out of power, and my wallet, though it contained a ticket. In the dark it just looked like weird scribbles on a piece of paper. With an incredible amount of effort, I finally managed to get my legs working enough to stand up. Though I had to use the wall as support, it was enough to move around, and I soon stumbled into the hallway of my train car. I took a moment to look through the windows in the hallway, and the world outside was empty. It both looked and felt as if nothing existed outside the boundaries of the train. I peeked in through the window into the next compartment, and I could see the vague shape of people sitting still in their seats, but upon trying to enter, I realized that the door was locked. I tried to knock, but the people on the other side didn't even flinch. I made my way from compartment to compartment, and while they all seemed to be occupied, none would open, and not a single person responded to my increasingly frantic knocks. I got to my feet while the train still turned, and noticed the door to the last compartment slowly glide open from the turn. "Hello, can anyone hear me?" I called out with a trembling voice as I approached the open door. No response, either because the compartment was empty, or because my voice hadn't been used for so long that barely functioned. I slowly peeked my head around the corner to see the compartment fully occupied by dark figures. All of them sitting perfectly still in their seats. "Hello," I said again. With a trembling hand, I checked the rest of the people for signs of life. All of them were beyond a shadow of a doubt, dead. I collapsed to the ground in front of one of the dead passengers. She was an elderly woman, dressed elegantly with wide-open, piercing blue eyes. I didn't want to stay in the compartment with them, but I was paralyzed by the lack of a plan. There I sat, surrounded by 6 dead people, trying to contemplate my next step. The train was still moving, which clearly meant that someone had to be in control of it, a conductor or at least someone with an idea as to what the hell was going on. So, I decided that my best bet would be to make my way to the locomotive, and pray that not everyone had died. On the train. Before I could consider the bizarre situation any further, the woman suddenly blinked. I shot to my feet in horror, as she blinked again. I double-checked her pulse, still nothing. Yet, her eyes kept blinking without any other signs of life. In shock, I looked around to find that the other 5 dead passengers were also blinking rapidly. Without checking them for life, I jumped out from the compartment and shot the door. I noticed a chunk of wood missing from it, as if someone had kicked it in, leaving it unable to properly close. As I slowly backed away from the compartment, I glimpsed out through the windows, into the empty void beyond. I humored the thought that we might be driving through a tunnel, but if so, how long could it possibly be? I walked through about 15 such cars, each alternating by rows of seats and compartments. It felt like hours passed as I made my way towards the locomotive, and just as I was about to enter through a door marked, "First Class," I was shoved to the floor by someone holding a bright light to my face. "Stay the fuck down," a deep voice shouted at me. Speechless, I could do nothing but comply with the man in front of me. "Wait, you're not dead?" the man asked. "They're not dead?" I asked. "Yeah, well, not exactly, it's like they're in hibernation." I looked at him in confusion. As he spoke those words, he seemed surprised by something behind me. "Fuck, I was too slow," he said, oddly calm. "We need to get out of here," John said as he pulled my arm and dragged me in through the door to another compartment car, though far nicer than the one I'd awoken in. All the doors had opened, and people were slowly piling out from each compartment into the hallway, staring at us with their wide-open eyes. "Keep it down, would ya?" he said quietly, clearly agitated by my idiocy. "The other passengers, what happened to them?" I asked. "Dead, most of them anyways, got a few survivors camped up in the dining car. I just came out to look for batteries, hoping we could get a phone working and get help. How the hell did you survive here all on your own? Do you remember where the train is going?" I asked. "The people out there seem fairly docile, can't we just push our way through, they don't seem to be moving?" I asked. As tried to finish the sentence, a large thud could be heard on the other side of the door. I carefully peeked out through the window to see that all the people had collapsed back to the ground, and that the door leading to the car behind us had opened up. A tall, obsidian black created pulled its way inside using large tendril-like appendages. It had thin stumps that resembled legs, and multiple more tendrils that slithered on along the walls, seeming to sense its surroundings. Though it was vaguely humanoid in nature, it didn't have a head, nor any eyes. Suddenly, he stood up and kicked the door, breaking it straight off its hinges. It barely fazed the creature, but it allowed us for enough wriggle room to bolt past it. "Run!" he yelled in agony as he tried to fight off the tendrils wrapping around him.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
My 11-year-old son was in a horrible accident 4 months ago. I don't want to get into the specifics of what happened, but it left him with disfiguring third-degree burns all across his face, head, and upper torso. My son stayed in the hospital for months. Various skin grafts were attempted but they didn't help. In fact, they somehow made my son look even worse. He barely looked human any longer. Family members and some of his friends wanted to visit him, but he refused. He wouldn't even consider it. He told me that he never wants another person to look at him ever again. He said that he never wanted to leave the hospital room. Ever. But of course the time eventually came for him to return home. At first, things were sort of okay. He holed himself up in his bedroom playing video games. It was a great escape for him. He wore a hat and sunglasses at all times, and it actually helped. At least a little. The hospital set him up with a psychiatrist to help him cope with his new reality. Last week the psychiatrist met with me privately. He told me that I can't keep sheltering him in his room. That I need to get my son out into the world. That he needs to slowly learn to accept his appearance. So a few days later I decided to take him downtown. We'd have lunch and walk on the beach. It took a lot of convincing, but my son eventually agreed. He put on his usual sunglasses and hat and we went outside to the bus stop. I could tell my son was worried. I was worried as well. We both had no idea how the world would react to him. We got on the bus and sat down in the front. The seats were sideways at this area, so the rest of the bus was looking at us. A little girl that was near us looked at my son. She grabbed her mother. She looked at my son again, and almost started crying. She whispered to her mother. Did my son see that? I didn't know. We had only moved a couple of stops, but already I noticed other people pointing. Whispering. People looked disgusted. I was just hoping so much that my son wasn't noticing. But then he quietly whispered, "Mom, they're looking at me." "Mom," he continued. He was now almost yelling. "They're all looking at me. They're staring. They're staring." "Calm down," I tried telling him. "They're only looking because you're yelling." I saw a teenager pull out his phone and start recording us. "No," my son shouted. "That's not why they're looking. They were already looking. Let's get out. I want off." The little girl at the back of the bus was now crying. Loudly. "Okay," I said. I pressed the button flagging the next stop. "They're looking at me," my son continued. Almost yelling. "I want off. Now. I want off. Take me home. Take me home." Some people were now laughing about the situation. And then I lost control of myself. I didn't even know I was doing it till it was too late. I screamed, loudly and piercingly in hysterics. "Stop staring at my son." The entire bus went silent. Everybody was looking at us. The driver had pulled over, and we weren't even at a stop. "Ma'am, can you and your son please exit the vehicle?" That night I ordered a package online. Last night I woke up very late. There was silence. I listened for my son, but I couldn't make anything out. I had the sense that something was watching me. A small amount of moonlight was sneaking in. Just enough for me to see something peering at me around my bedroom door. It was my son. His horribly disfigured face just slightly lit up by a faint ray of light. He stared at me. And then he began whispering again. In that alien language. I screamed as loud as I could. My son turned and ran back into his bedroom. It's now hours later, and he still hasn't left that room. I didn't even try to get back to sleep again. I turned on my computer and started writing out these very experiences. My package arrived early this morning. I also did some research. I found out that this is a condition called teratophobia. The fear of disfigurement and disfigured people. It got me thinking, has my son's disfigurement driven him crazy? Or am I suffering from extreme teratophobia, and my mind is exaggerating these experiences? I'm not sure. But what I do know is that my son can't do this alone. And neither can I. It's become abundantly clear. A mother should do anything for her son, right? I can't fix his grotesque and horrifying appearance. But I can make him feel less alone. To give him a partner. My son and I will be in it together. How better to confront your fear than to specifically turn into an example of its focus? I opened the package. I looked at its content. Nitric acid. I wondered how I should splash it on my face. I don't want to lose my eyesight in this process. I suppose I'll have to do a little more research.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
My brother and I are translating Grandpa's journal from the Great Depression. It's pretty fucked up, first entry, by colorblindness. I didn't really know my grandfather that well. For most of my life he lived down in Fouke, a good 3-hour drive if there's no traffic. In fact, if it wasn't for my brother Louis I probably wouldn't even be writing this down right now. Louis is, well, I guess I don't really know how to explain him other than just to say that once you meet him you will not forget him. It was an unusual request, but if you know Louis that's pretty much par for the course. Given what I could remember Mom telling us, I actually thought that might be a good idea. Times were tough back then, as I'm sure you know, but personal accounts of the time period are few nowadays. Maybe we could even get a publisher interested in publishing Grandpa's autobiography. I told Louis to go ahead and send me a few scans of the journal, and I would start right away on the project. I didn't want to tell him my schedule was already packed, and that the journals were probably nothing too fantastic. His hopes were set so high I figured I had to see it through. Louis will be using his account every other day so we can get it out there as soon as possible. 5th entry. June 3, 1928. My name is Jake. That's all you need to know for now. I grew up alongside my 2 older brothers, Nathan and Tim, in a small town that was only well known for 3 things: poverty, urban legends, and moonshine. He was hung because of color, of course, but back then when people started to starve, leaving them out there in the trees seemed like a small justice to the rest of the folk in town. It was just after church and Pa was taking some of our crop in to sell to the city folk that liked to drive into town to buy our victuals. I remember Nathan's slack jaw hanging down as he gawked at the rich cars they drove in on the north stretch of Fouke. Farmers were lining up to try and make a deal with the travelers. Just a small bit of money could easily feed a family of 4. The tomatoes and eggplants we had brought were not full grown, but given Ma's time with fever, Pa felt like he couldn't wait another week to sell. Tim wasn't quite as impressed with the city slickers as Nathan and I were. In fact, the first thing he did when Pa stopped the buggy was spit on the ground. "Bunch of stick up their goody 2 shoes if you ask me," Tim said as he kicked away at some of the gravel. "Shut up," Tim said, pushing him. I tossed a few stray bits of hay at my brother. There was a well-dressed girl about our age standing near to our cart as we started to fight, her eyes lit up with wonder and amusement as though she found our little quarrel entertaining. "No sale today, boys, let's go home," Pa said as he pulled on the bridle for the horse. All 3 of us looked at the city folk as they got into the jalopies and rode off in the opposite direction without a care in the world. When we got back to our farm, Pa told us to tend to the horses and clean up the barn before supper. I knew that he really meant for us to stay out of the way while he tended to Ma. "What are you jabbering about, Jake?" Tim asked. "Them rich folk. What if we hit 'em where it hurt, made them pay for what they done to us?" I said. "Yeah, right. Ain't no bigwig gonna listen to 3 country boys," Nathan told us. But I told them to give me time until after supper to think. To figure out if the plan would really work. "We're gonna kidnap one of their fat little brats. Hold a ransom, and make a fortune," I said. Nathan was a bit reluctant, but that changed as the week went on and Ma got worse. He could see that without medicine she wouldn't last till the summer festival. Everything was set to work perfectly. June 9th and 10th, 1928. Nathan tried to get her to wake up as we sat there rubbing her arm and calling her name. But she never did. I held my dead mother's hand for almost 3 hours, sobbing in and out of exhaustion as I refused to accept this was the end. Nathan couldn't even contain his frustration. He started to smash every dish in the kitchen and I slapped him down, glaring at him like a mother hen. Together in our crazed tragic stupor we dutifully cleaned the mess he had made around the table. They said they would come first thing Monday morning. I know that they say spirits leave the body upon death, but the feelings of anger and loss I had that night as I went to bed told me that Ma hadn't left us just yet. It wasn't fair. So I went out to the buggy that next morning for our usual run into town. Tim and Nathan were so overcome with grief they had slept in well past the rooster's crow. I kept my eyes straight ahead and kept asking God to forgive what I was about to do. A city slicker's old Ford just sitting on the side of the road with a flat tire. The dad was sticking his head under the hood as two kids giggled in the seat and waved toward me. Their smiles faded a few minutes later when I blew their father's head off. It split apart like a balloon, spilling his innards onto the radiator and windshield. I will never forget that sound it made. Like an egg cracking against a sizzling pan. I turned the buggy around and told them to chin up and act like they were fine as we moved back toward the open country roads. By breakfast I had taken them both to the barn and used the horse bridles to tie them near where we used to keep the pigs. They moaned and whined a bit as I fastened the knots and gave them a bucket to piss in. I knew I would need my brother's help for what would come next. Even if it means making a deal with the devil. I waited until Pa had decided to take an afternoon nap to tell Nathan and Tim what I had done. They were frantic at first given the blood I had shed, but also eager to get things underway. Nathan was the first to get over his nerves and go check the barn to see my prize trophies. Nathan returned a few minutes later with a look of confusion on his face. "I thought you said there were two of them," he asked. My eyes got wider than saucer plates as I raced to the barn, worried that one of the kids had escaped. What I found though, was reason enough for me to remember and recount all of my experiences in a journal.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
My daughter is a serial killer. I just found out she may be something much worse, by an obscurity notice. It was a mercy in the end for them. Death. Nobody would want to live in the aftermath of what she did. The cop told me that the coroner had been gray when she said this. That in 25 years of policing work he had never seen anything this awful. Some nights I still wake up in terror from nightmares of what she did. We avoided the press, but that didn't mean the articles wouldn't be written. And the articles came. Articles where they questioned what kind of childhood she had. What kind of parents we were. They dug through everything about our family and were probably disappointed to find that we were your run-of-the-mill, all-American family, so they made things up through speculation. Perhaps we were too boring. Perhaps the normalcy was the problem. Either way, the fallout was that my wife and I lost our jobs. We were accosted on the streets. Our tires were flattened multiple times, and 3 times I've had to remove graffiti from the sides of our house calling us unspeakable things. My son couldn't handle it. He and his wife had to change their names and leave the state. We couldn't do that though. We were asked to try to get more information out of her. The police said that there were bodies they couldn't identify yet, and that if we could get her to talk, it would help bring some peace to the victims' families. They also wanted to know how she did it. The guilt of what our child had done to other people's children made us go more than our love for our daughter. It felt like some small way of atonement, finding out what we could and helping in some way. It happened on the day of the visit. We sat nervously and waited in a highly secure room within the most high-security prison. 2 wardens stood within the room with us, 2 stood outside, and 4 wardens escorted Fiona, in chains, to us. "Hi Dad. Mom. She sat down across the table from us. I flinched as the sound of the chains as they clinked when she moved. Fiona. My wife, Christina, managed, her hand clutched right around a tissue. Then she was crying again and Fiona's face changed a bit. She looked at Christina in concern. Mom, please don't cry. If you knew what I know, you wouldn't be upset. Anger began to bubble up inside me. What the hell was wrong with Fiona? I had read enough now to know that serial killers were devoid of empathy or human emotions in general, but this wasn't the little girl I had raised to be a good woman. What happened to you? I asked, my voice quiet as I tried to keep the emotion out of it. Why did you kill all those people? Fiona sat back smiling and tossed her blonde hair over her shoulder. I'm talking about your father, Dad. And his father. And his father. All those generations. I swallowed hard and glanced at the prison warden. If he felt like something was weird about our conversation, he didn't show it, however. What about them? I asked her, concern edging its way into my voice. You know what this is. You have always known. She said, leaning forward. We don't like it when you lie. She sat back and smiled brightly. Then I swear to you my heart stopped. Suddenly the entire room darkened. Fiona's eyes went completely black. Her skin and hair turned pale white. And yet the guards kept standing there, seemingly seeing nothing, frozen in time. I tried to look at Christina, but she just sat there, staring ahead of her into nothingness, a tear frozen on her cheek. Those words, I knew those words. I had seen them before. My hands cold and clammy, I pushed back from the table as the chair fell away and backed myself up against a wall, terror gripping my chest. The last thing we heard as we left the room was Fiona's laughter, once vibrant, now cold and cruel. When we got home, I waited until dinner was over and we went up to bed. I waited until Christina had taken her sleeping pill and her breathing was even enough to know she was asleep. Then, I quietly got up and made my way to the attic. I knew exactly what I was looking for. After I hauled myself up from the square-shaped opening in our ceiling into the dark, quiet room I hadn't visited since we had moved into this house, I shone my torch around. Mostly the room was full of the children's old toys and clothes, things we had been planning to give away and never got around to. Old furniture that belonged to our parents. Lying inside was a series of old, leather-bound journals I had hoped I would never ever have to look at again. Except, there were no witches. You already know this if you know anything about the witch trials. What Witchfinder generals were hunting was much, much more ancient. They were hunting the old gods. So they began to live amongst us to adapt to their mortality. Less powerful. Less able to protect themselves. And we used that adaptation against them. We hunted them in the name our own god. We told ourselves that this is what needed to be done to keep our species safe. My family carried this tradition on for years, finding what was left of the ancient ones and decimating them. All the way till my father was born and refused to train in the ways of his father. My father killed his father when he was only a teenager. He was trying to protect a girl who would later become his wife. My mother. He kept the journals. He kept them to tell me of the history he was ashamed of, to tell me that I must never go down this route. I had read them years ago and shuddered at the amount of lives my family had stolen. And I never had. I had lived a good life and raised a good family. Or so I had thought. Finally, I found the thing I was looking for. It was there in the third journal. The last words of an ancient goddess that was burned alive. For every one of us you kill, We will take 1,000 of you in return. Our vengeance will speak through your own blood." Sitting there written in faded old ink were the words.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
When I was a little kid, the thing I feared most was my stuffed lemur, by her creation. I decimated the tissue paper in record timing, bypassing the ribbon to tear straight through the thin layer between me and what I assumed to be the best gift ever. It wasn't even my birthday, or Christmas, or anything like that, though Ms. Braxton had told me just that day that I was the absolute best in the class at spelling, because "It's easy," I told her, beaming, then lowered my high-pitched voice to a whisper, as if I'd discovered the greatest secret in the world. Big elephants could always use some exercise. She laughed and laughed and laughed, pressed both hands over her chest as if her heart was about to swell right out of her, kind of like the Grinch, but she was never mean like he was. I knew at that moment, then, that whatever best gift ever I was about to unveil, I deserved it for making Ms. Braxton laugh so hard that she cried that day. I huffed, pouting. "I liked the red pandas, Mom. I hate it, I don't want some other kid's toy." Instead, I pushed him away, refusing to cuddle up with him at bedtime. My parents would tuck him in beside me and I'd punch him right off the bed, only to find him later sitting on the little wooden chair I had set up in my room. Even in the dark, with only the dim glow of my race car nightlight, I could see him, seeing me, I could see him watching me. His orange stare bored right through me, like a paralyzing toxin, his smothering glare rendered my muscles useless. Every night, I was plagued by nightmares featuring the stuffed toy. I know it sounds silly, but I'd toss and turn feverishly in my sleep, mind riddled with images of my demise at Lemmy's hands. I dreamed of his blank, orange stare, I dreamed of his long arms reaching out and wrapping around my neck to strangle me, I dreamed of him hanging by his tail from the ceiling, then dropping down to get me. He was a fluffy toy, only about a foot tall, but I was terrified of him. So, after my parents kissed me goodnight one night, I crept out of bed with the infernal toy tucked under my arm. I placed him there, sitting upright on the chair. He watched me, and I watched him back for a moment before shaking my head and turning him around so that he was facing the back of the chair. For the first time in months, I fell into bed relieved, fell into a comfortable, restful slumber. I startled awake mere hours later. Frustrated, I almost groaned, but the sound caught in my throat as I risked a look across the room. Sure enough, Lemmy was still sitting on his little chair, yet not like I'd left him, no, he turned himself right back around to face me. I found myself locked in his unblinking, penetrating stare. Even worse, his enormous red-orange eyes seemed to glow gently in the darkness of my bedroom, but not like one of the many glow-in-the-dark toys lining the shelves in my room. Something about the glow felt omniscient, sinister. The power of his gaze was unbreakable, freezing me in place. I can remember likening it to being caught in a UFO's tractor beam like I'd seen in cartoons, powerless to evade whatever my captor had in store for me. Even today, I'm not sure if it was his stare that held me, or more that I dare not look away for fear of what he'd do as soon as I let him out of my own sight. In a way, I think, we trapped each other, locked in an eternal staring contest, waiting for the other to blink. I was the first to break, as a series of guttural clicks started to fill the room. I tried desperately to throw my covers over my head but only succeeded in lethargically pulling my blanket up to my chin, my movements slow like the running of maple syrup onto the pancakes my dad made every Sunday morning. The temperature dropped suddenly, quickly, forcing me to shiver even under the fluffy down comforter I'd cocooned myself in as if it were some sort of safe haven. Again, kid logic. The raspy sounds grew louder, more oppressive, yet my gaze never wavered, nor did Lemmy's. The amber glow emanating from his gargantuan eyes grew brighter along with the horrific crescendo of croaky clicking. In that moment, I knew, just knew, that he was the source of the disturbing sounds, that he was finally gearing up to end my life before it had barely begun. I knew I had to act, or I'd be 6 feet under by morning. The knob to my closet door was turning, all on its own, as if something was inside. I could only watch as it made its slow arc around, time at a complete standstill until it completed its full revolution. The door creaked open, just a crack, before a pale hand reached through the sliver of space, giving way to an unnaturally elongated arm that stretched around the door's edge, bending backwards at the elbow to extend its forearm across the entire span of the door's surface. I wanted to scream, or cry, or shout for my parents to come to my rescue, but all I could do was wet myself. A second arm emerged from the void of my closet, elbow popping sickeningly as it wrapped around the door below the first. The third arm came much faster than the first two, more confident, even. It spread itself along the wall, long fingers sweeping across the rocket ship wallpaper lining my room. The fourth arm joined the third, joints creaking as the elbow flexed backwards. I laid there, still as a statue, as each individual appendage emerged until I could count 8 gruesome arms, 4 on each side, bracing themselves against the hard surface of the wall, of the closet door, preparing to pounce. 8 massive eyes, each shining black eye blinking independently of the others, yet each one firmly locked on me, on its prey. With its body still hidden in the depths of my closet, it repositioned its arms, spreading them out from floor to ceiling with a nauseating crackling sound. I wanted to close my eyes, but I couldn't, even in the face of certain death. I waited for its attack, resolving to spend my final moments by filling my mind with pleasant memories. The time I hit a home run in Little League and Mom took me out for ice cream, that Christmas when Santa brought me an Xbox, Dad's special Sunday pancakes, making Ms. Braxton laugh so hard that she cried, when Mom and Dad took me to the zoo and I found my favorite animal, the red panda, not the lemur. The gasping clicks began to fade away to a gentle whisper. The monster poised itself for a second longer before retreating back into the closet, hurriedly withdrawing all of its arms and slamming the door shut. Lemmy's neck twisted back to face me, to watch me in my bed. The illumination of his eyes dimmed slowly until the glow ultimately extinguished to reveal his usual set of massive, glassy orange eyes. I never thought I'd get to sleep after any of that, but I had the most restful sleep of my life for the remaining hours until morning broke the next day. Immediately, Lemmy became my unlikely companion, my best friend, my greatest confidant, my nightly protector. I'm almost 18, and I still sleep with him snuggled under my arm every night.
Whew, that gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I asked an art AI to imagine My Killer's Face, by Beardify. As soon as I typed the words into the prompt, I knew I shouldn't have. Those intricately detailed landscapes that always seem to have something desolate and apocalyptic about them. Those uncanny images that feel like photos of real people, but aren't. Just the photorealistic face of the same man, repeated 4 times. He looked to be in his 30s, with brown undercut hair that stuck to his pasty white forehead. His mouth was twisted into a sneer, like he was about to laugh at a nasty joke. In every image, he wore the same stained white t-shirt and bomber jacket, leaned on the same Formica table in the same dirty kitchen, and held the same perfectly rendered can of light beer. I felt a sudden impulse to delete the image, block the AI, and throw my laptop out the window. It was almost 12:30. How long had I been staring at that ominous, eerily realistic face? The shadowy, disproportionate figures and generic faces the prompt returned were about what I'd expected, but nothing like the 4 identical images above. The bomber jacket. The greasy brown hair. That cruel smirk. I didn't even have time to gasp before the hunting knife flashed in his hand, plunging into my chest again and again. I jolted awake in a puddle of sweat. I staggered to the bathroom and poured cold water down my throat. How could a single image affect me so much? What is my killer doing now? This image lasted longer than the first, but soon it too blurred and was replaced by an error message. When I contacted the Art AI's customer support team, they were as confused as I was. They had no record of the prompts or images I described ever being created. I waited impatiently for the morning to try again. All 4 images were of a brown-haired man frying eggs in a tiny kitchen. He was looking upward in irritation, looking at me. I slammed the screen of my laptop shut. I was late for work. I only received distorted, generic images. The man with the brown hair was gone. I couldn't find the brown-haired man unless I asked the Art AI for him specifically. Searching for information about him got me nowhere. Or at least Ronnie was the name on his mechanic jumpsuit when I asked for full body image of my killer now. The prompt, my killer as seen from a distance, also gave me some insight into his car and house. The images were never detailed enough to provide a plate number or address, but I did get a lot of views of a service station along a busy road, a tan car interior filled with fast food wrappers, and a trailer with a redwood deck. I know you're watching. I wish I could say that fear for my own life was the only reason I continued to spy on Ronnie. The truth was that being able to peer into Ronnie's life at any time had given me a level of access to another person's inner world that I'd never experienced before. I wasn't exactly popular at work, and even back in high school, I was never the friend who people poured their hearts out to. But there were no secrets between Ronnie and I. I knew his girlfriend Katie's favorite sexual position and preferred brand of nail polish. I don't think Ronnie knew exactly what was going on, but it was clear that it was affecting him. He started spending more and more time alone in the dark. He looked worn and haggard, as though my late-night observations had somehow jolted him out of sleep. Ready to keep our appointment with fate. The whole experience of being processed passed like a dream, but as I was being led to my holding cell, the harsh laughter of 2 officers brought me back to reality. "You sure it's okay to leave that psycho in with the others?" the younger cop asked. "I mean, when we picked him up he was screaming about invisible people watching him." "Look," his older colleague rested her hands on her belt. "If we gave all the crazies their own cell, there'd be no room for anybody else. And look," she grinned at me with a wolfish smile, "he's already got a roommate." I already knew who I'd see waiting for me when I rounded the corner of the cell block. Ronnie looked worse than ever. "Get in there." The older cop grunted. When I grabbed the bars instinctively, she pressed harder. "Stop resisting." "Wait." I was practically whimpering. "Is there another cell I can go to? Can't I have a different cell?" "Officer, Ronnie's shadow fell across me as he stood up. "Jesus!" I heard a voice say from what felt like very far away. "He's killing him." Suddenly hands were pulling us apart, dragging me backwards across the cold, slick floor. Grunts and dull thuds from inside the cell told me that Ronnie was being beaten into submission. After I was released on bail, I did my best to do as Ronnie asked. After all, I'd been at least partially responsible for his incarceration. If I was him, I realized, I'd want to murder me, too. The black mirror of my laptop screen seemed to call to me. "Just one peek," it seemed to say. "What's the harm? He probably won't even notice." Guiltily, I opened the Art AI and typed the prompt, "My killer as seen from a hidden place." "Now I can see you, too." Once per day, I told myself. Just to make sure he's still locked up. And once per day, I saw the slow change in Ronnie. He'd stopped staring at the ceiling, stopped writing messages on the floor. His hair was growing out. He did push-ups, read books from the institution library, talked to his doctors. Did he no longer notice my spying? Or was he just hiding his rage long enough to be released? I had a bad feeling I knew the answer. Ronnie must have been released early in the morning, and with my arrest record, he probably had no trouble finding my address. Understanding always comes too late. Even if I tried to leave the house, get a weapon, or call for help, I know that I would end in the same place, beneath the point of Ronnie's knife. I've locked the doors and windows, but it won't help.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
When I saw the warnings on the TV, I instantly locked my door and barricaded it with the dining room table. I could hear people from other apartments doing the same. I ran to the windows and shut them. Nothing was getting in on my watch. She looked so innocent in her little pink pajamas. My heart swelled. I swept her up in my arms and kissed her forehead. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Papa is going to make it okay." The TV was still on. A man with shaking hands read a teleprompter. "Lock your doors and your windows. They can get in from any opening. Don't open the door for any reason. They will lie to you, but don't believe them. The National Guard recommends earplugs." She looked up at me with big blue eyes. "I'm too scared, Daddy." The man was sweating now. Authorities say they are targeting anyone within a 50-mile radius of the crash site. We are unclear exactly what they are. It is not an animal previously seen. It may have come from whatever caused the crash. It looks like a human. I turned my head and saw Ava with her headphones half off. I struggled to reply. What do you mean, sweetie?" "No, there are smaller things inside. Moldycules." My eyes drifted back to the TV. The man and the woman were less anxious now. The man said, "Authorities are saying they will appear just like human beings. You may even believe you know them." The woman laughed curly. "No, they will not appear like that. Nothing like that. Don't you remember, dear?" He looked at her, smiling. "You're right, dear." Terrified, I grabbed her tiny body and tossed her across the room into the wall. I heard a crack. Her shoulder popped and her elbow was bent the wrong way. A bone spurted out of her chest. She let out a small cry. In the darkness I realized her skin was not white. It was caramel. It must have been the light of the TV that made her look white. Someone knocked on the door. Her voice was sweet. "Dear, I'm home. For some reason my key doesn't work." Ava stopped breathing. I held my breath. I could hear other apartment doors opening. Screams followed. The man on the TV was half eaten by his co-host.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
I Know Why the US is Creating the Space Force, and It Isn't What You Think, by Dopamine. In 1910, the United States military discovered an extra-dimensional rift in the California desert. At the time, they didn't understand what it was, and naturally launched expeditions. Few of the explorers survived. Those that did returned as violent men incapable of speech. Each one attacked fellow servicemen and doctors before dying. Dying is perhaps too kind of a word. Their tissues lost structural integrity, leaving these men boneless, grotesque parodies of humanity. In 1914, a being of unknown origin peered out of the now heavily guarded rift. We weren't able to stop it. Not only was it utterly immune to human weaponry, the sight of it caused strokes, heart attacks, and in some cases, spontaneous physical mutations in the guards. Fortunately, it didn't stay long. Pretend the walls that separate dimensions are reinforced steel. For about 30 seconds, this physicist transformed the steel wall into a mesh screen, permeable, unsecured, and easily destroyed. Surveillance footage shows the handler drifting between infancy and old age like a sped-up film. Suddenly the handler screams, "They've already come. This is what will come. This is what has come." According to the time stamp, it resumes precisely 14 seconds later. All that remains of the handler is a raw, human-shaped pile of bone viscera. Behind him, the being grapples with that glimmering dark slit, pulling it closed the way we might close a pair of curtains. The being succeeds, then collapses beside the handler's remains and grieves. The grieving proved that the being bonded closely with its captors. Though highly intelligent, in fact, immeasurably intelligent by human standards, it bonded to people in a manner similar to that of companion animals. In stark contrast to the being's gentle loyalty, the intruders, the godlike monstrosities even our cameras can't comprehend, were hostile. That incident was the first sighting, but it was far from the last. From that day forward, the monsters, eventually codenamed SED, attempted to cross into our world on a frequent basis. Our only recourse was the being, who bravely knit the openings closed and, in some cases, injured or even killed the intruding SED. I've seen the footage from 24 angles. A stark black line cracks the air and grows, morphing into a glimmering obelisk that spans floor to ceiling. A SED emerges. We see a glimpse of it, a titan made of stars and teeth and reptilian eyes, before the cameras goes dark. We waited for the inevitable breakout of the SED, but it never came. I didn't have time to ponder this for long, however. I caught a glimpse of the SED. Its skin pulsated under the lights, blinding snakes of mercury writhing around rivers of oil-slick black and banner-like undulations that reminded me of the aurora borealis. Eyes blinked at me, alien and fearless and full of a blank, impersonal rage. The being can speak, but it cannot speak to us. Only a few have heard the voice of the being. The few that didn't die of stroke ended up unable to hear anything but echoes of the being's voice, which drove them to suicide. So, for several decades, the being communicated by manipulating matter in a way I can only describe as puppet shows, rough approximations of people, places, and things that told a story the being thought we would understand. At that moment, the SED shuddered and its mouth opened. A hallucinatory, multicolored darkness flooded from its jaws and spilled throughout the room like a tsunami. Then hands plunged into my ruined form, warm and small and terribly painful. The next thing I knew, I was on my back in the birthing chamber. That pain intensified, overtaking all of my senses. I will be honest, I didn't expect to wake up. The kind of knowledge with which I've been entrusted exacts a terrible price. I wasn't entirely wrong. They only kept me alive because the being had bonded so closely to me, and they felt like I might be able to coax it back to US territory. You see, after rescuing me and knitting the rift, the being and its daughter, who researchers named Ashira, fled. Remember, we weren't actually capable of imprisoning the being. It just allowed us to do it out of its boundless, incomprehensible devotion to its handlers. I expected to die. Hundreds of personnel over several decades had failed to extract this information from the being. Why would I be the one to succeed? Even though I was terrified, my reunion with the being was strangely wonderful. It grieved over my injuries and our sustained separation, then lay at my side. We luxuriated in each other's presence for many hours. You will hate me. I could never hate you. What do you mean? I asked. The being was right, I didn't understand. Neither did anyone else. No one ever would, the being never communicated again. In December 2015, US intelligence confirmed that Eshira was at a secure compound in Russia's far north. Russia quickly developed its own, rather more successful, breeding program. They keep Charam but euthanize Ray. Funny how that worked out. The next day, a set attacked a Russian nursery full of Charam. As the being predicted, it came from the sky, from outer space. The being immediately portaled to the Charam and fought to the death. Its sacrifice was not in vain, it immobilized the Sed long enough for the Charam to eat and kill it. According to our intelligence, all of the Russian Charam died last week following an episode of mass psychosis. Autopsies revealed that all of their skeletons had been replaced with a hardened, calcified fungus. The people who performed the autopsy died in similar circumstances, mindlessly violent, with fungus in place of bones. We found Eshira. She is prepared to die for us. She's half human, after all, this is her world. She'll close rifts on Earth and in space until it kills her. Contrary to released information, the government's been in space for quite a long time. Naturally, we're launching attacks against the Sed. Without Charam, I don't think we have a chance. But Eshira is willing to try. The government is willing to send her into space to close the rifts, and it is willing to put soldiers in spacecraft to bomb the Sed to death. It sounds ridiculous, putting a demigod on a rocket ship. The worst part is even if it works, there's nothing to do about the fungus.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
I found a kidnapped boy in my basement, by End the Madness please. You can imagine my surprise when I went into the basement and found a boy strapped to a pipe on the far wall. I actually screamed. The original goal was to go into the basement to see if the original owners had left any WD-40 on the shelves. I had bought this house 3 weeks ago, my first house at 32, and the previous owners had left some junk in the basement, but apparently they left more than I first realized. He looked terrified at first, huddling against the pipe. Naked and bruised. The fact I could see his ribs protruding suggested he had been here a while, and underfed. He sobbed tearlessly, making his stomach vibrate. I pulled out an Android touchscreen. He cocked his head. Something sunk in my stomach. There was something very wrong with this boy. The screen lit up and I entered my passcode. He gasped. It's a cell phone. My dad owns one of those, but it sure as hell doesn't look like that. Okay, Oliver. We're gonna get you help, but what year do you think it is? There was a creaking sound, somebody was coming down the basement stairs. I did so without thinking, running to hide behind the boxes. You saying something just now? The man's voice asked. Who the fuck was this man in my house? How did he get in? Why couldn't I touch Oliver? I'm gonna untie you. No funny shit. Oliver Kemp. Ethnicity, Caucasian. Height, 5 feet 8 inches. Oliver yelped. A loud smack followed. I was furiously shaking, listening to the sobbing and grunting just on the other side of the boxes. It didn't make any sense. Oliver couldn't look that young if the kidnapping had happened that long ago. I was hiding in my own basement from ghosts. I could hear Oliver scrambling across the floor. There was silence as the man tied him up again. I remained still until the stairs creaked and the door slammed shut, giving it a few extra seconds for good measure. Oliver's nose was bleeding. His eyes were swollen with tears, but he looked relieved to see me. It made me feel all the worse. "I want to try something, Oliver," I said quietly. With a sorry face, I showed him the screen. A photo of nothing. He was more interested in the phone itself, not realizing what the photo showed. He looked at me as if I was wearing a tinfoil hat. "It is. This is the future. That's why we can't touch. Our times are, like, mixed up. You need to call the police. Please. Oliver, they can't help you. We're gonna figure something out. Please. Please call the police. Your time. He hasn't been caught already in 2018. Jesus. Am I dead? I'm so sorry, Oliver. I will do anything I can to help. I'll find him, now. Maybe I'm still alive," he whispered. "Like, still in his basement somewhere. How old would I be?" Oliver told me the man was Devin McPherson. He went to the same church as Oliver's family. Oliver had even been over to this house for a barbecue. Devin was a gardener. That made sense. I bought this house and the garden was in immaculate condition. A horrible thought occurred, maybe Oliver was buried in this yard. He nodded, unassured. "Hello." I called out. "Have you seen the yard?" I asked. "Yeah. Couple of times. I don't remember it super well." "I don't know, I don't remember that," he said, looking at the vegetable garden. "I think he had more trees. There was also, like, a big rock that he turned into a seat." I swiped to the photo of the rock, now buried under some shrubs. "Yeah. That one." "So, the only new thing is the vegetable garden?" I confirmed. "What did I say about making noise?" Devin growled, bumbling down the stairs. It was evening, but I got to work in the yard, digging up the vegetable garden. Just a square of dirt surrounded by a little wall of bricks. Dirt flung all over my yard. It was exhausting work, but I had a horrible hunch. I wish I had done more for Oliver. Perhaps I should have penned a letter to his family for him, but that would be a very traumatic experience for both of us. I still checked the basement every few hours, slightly hoping he would be back. Back so I could comfort him more, tell him that he had been avenged. His killer was caught. But he would never return. I left him that night with Devin, terrified and alone.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
My dad taught me how to use the internet because sometimes he said he felt too lazy to scroll and he just wanted to sit and smoke cigarettes and drink beer, and I would read out the answers in the threads he liked the sound of. Sometimes when he would leave the room to go and do a piss, I would drink a gulp or two of beer from his can and it would taste warm and horrid like sawdust, but I would do it anyway because it would make me feel older, and then I would spend the rest of the day acting like a grown-up. But this is all besides the point. I am here because I need help with something. My dad is not scared off very much. In fact, I think he is the bravest man I have ever seen. Or at least he is probably the strongest. But sometimes when he talks about my uncle, he goes all pale and his eyes go wide and he shakes like I do if I'm really tired or if I am carrying something that is too heavy for me. And recently, maybe a week ago, maybe more, I do not know, I am not very good with calendars. And he started drinking more, and not just beer but vodka and whiskey, and he would drink until he was sick like I was when he kicked me, and then he would fall asleep, but not completely asleep but half asleep, and he would say things in a funny voice. Things like please don't do that and go away, and sometimes he would grab me by the arm so hard it hurt and say things like if he comes you must not let him in, do you understand, you must not let him in. And so I didn't, but I did not know when he would come or what he would look like. And my dad was always passed out on the sofa and he stank of sweat and vodka, and so I would leave him because he does not like to be woken up. And then I got too scared of even going upstairs because the house is old and makes these strange sounds at night which my dad says are just pipes. Shut up, just pipes. And he just stood like that and watched me and I watched him. And my dad snored like a car engine. A knock knock knock. And I noticed then that my dad was not asleep but awake, and his eyes were wide open and his blue shirt was stained at the pits and on the belly dark with sweat, and his face looked half like he was crying, half like he wanted to scream. But no noise was coming out, like a fish makes no noise when it is on the pier, it just flops and can't breathe. It said, "You owe me this, George, you owe me this, just this little one." And it was a scratchy voice like it wasn't used very often, and I thought maybe their throat was like dry hay. And then I can see it, a face pressed against the window looking straight at me like it appeared out of nowhere. Its teeth are the color of earwax or melted butter. Which I most certainly have not, because I haven't actually been sleeping very much. And I say, I don't know what. And she says, "The crash, George, the crash." He is probably old enough to know he should know. And my dad says, "Julie, you need to shut the hell up," and she does, and that is the end of that. Uncle. He is weeping and somehow still smiling, that big yellow smile, and he is saying. And my dad is doing that fish thing with his mouth. And Uncle is pressing his face against the window now and opening his mouth, and his tongue is the same color as the bags under his eyes, and he is saying, "Let me in." And Uncle's voice is all small and girly now, and he is saying, "Please, oh please Johnny, you must let me in, your father is so sick and I have medicine." All high-pitched and squeaky. And he does. But he says he will be back tomorrow and he will take what he is owed, mark his words. I do not know what deal was made, but I am going to try and find out. I have got a pan and a knife from a kitchen, like a sword and a shield in case worse comes to the worse. But I am so scared, really. I know boys are not meant to say things like that, but I am, and I do not know what to do. Because he will come back, I know he will. All I know is that it is so bad that when I asked my dad what he meant, he cried and held my head, and I had not seen him cry that hard since Mum died. I do not know where else to turn. And last night before Uncle left, when he peered in through the window and looked straight in my eyes, he winked.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
Why I Stopped Hacking. For Good, by Menmuro. I grew up all my life glued to a computer. When I first started talking, I was already browsing through my uncle's computer, switching between games. By the time I was 10, I was taking over my family's MSN accounts and making them send each other awkward messages. I was 10 at the time, so the messages were stuff like, "I hate you," or "Give me back my Power Ranger." Now I wish I'd have stopped there. Oh God, I wish I stopped there. But I was addicted. That feeling of justice being served by my hands was one I loved and wanted more. So I targeted criminals, the type that used the dark web to hide and spread their filth. For 4 years straight I was a pain in their asses. Pedophiles, rapists, heavy drug dealers, you name it. If they were online, I was making their lives a living hell. I thought I was being smart, I thought I was hiding myself pretty well. But fuck man, something was following me every step of the way. And it would soon tell me. At this point I think he's referring to video games. Yeah dude, what did you have in mind? League of Legends? Dota? I don't mind. This isn't a joke, Danny, I take these games extremely seriously. Okay, what? How did he know I laughed? Did he guess? There's no way he can see me, my camera isn't even plugged in, and how could he have gotten into my apartment? My Facebook profile had a fake address on it and I never used my real address for anything, not even Amazon or eBay. This has to be a joke. I wrote, "Sure dude, I'm bored as fuck anyway." I was buying time to try and find out where this son of a bitch was. I scoured everywhere trying to find any small clue to latch onto. Found something, kept going and looked into it more. Eventually leading up to an address. When I looked at the address I froze. I could feel my blood draining from my face. It was my address. I was the only one living there, but somehow this asshole was using my address as a cover. Ping. Another message. Hey Mom, everything alright? Hey Danny, what's the weather like in Japan? Part 2 has been released.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is Horror Slop.
The Girl Named B, by Theod Catlety. Sorry, I pulled out an earbud and scrambled to my feet. I didn't hear you back there. B turned to look, tucking a lock of hair behind her ear. I see. You visit often? She asked. It's you. Bye, I said, waving as I watched B return to her car. She opened the door and held it open just for a second to let a young man poke his head out. He wasn't nearly as graceful as B when he seemingly recognized my grandfather, his jaw dropping and eyes nearly popping out of his head. I just need to be alone for a bit. My grandfather shuffled back to his bedroom, leaving me alone. It wasn't until the sun was going down that he called me into his bedroom. My grandfather was a quiet man. I'd never known him to make the outburst like the one earlier that day. Even when I entered the room, he just pointed to his closet. Check behind the coats, there's a photo frame, he said. I keep it just for myself. His name is Francis. The story was heartwarming, but there was certainly a part nagging at me. Why have you never talked about Francis before then? I asked. That smile on my grandfather's face vanished. Because I never wanted to think of him again. It was probably a week after this photo was taken that we met her. We were on a walk through the woods. We took a lot of those. Just so we couldn't be bothered by people who thought a black man and a white man couldn't be friends. We were on the way back when we heard a car refusing to turn over. Francis insisted we take the right path to see if someone needed help. I followed. He was always the leader out of the two of us. We didn't expect to see such a nice car way back where we were, but what we didn't really expect to see the behemoth of a man poking away at the engine, or the girl standing beside the car, her dress spattered in mud as she shivered in the cold. She looked up at us and her eyes met Francis, and I knew it was all over then. Because he looked at her and he fell in love. Was she also black? I asked. She was B. My grandfather shook his head. Cass, you have to remember where we live. About 3 years before a black man was accused of groping a white woman. No evidence, it was just what her brother said what happened. What happened to that poor bastard? My grandfather shuddered. It wasn't human. Humans don't do that to other humans. I was worried about Francis' safety. I gave him an earful on the way home about it. He was a bit embarrassed, but he realized where I was coming from. I was worried for him. He promised me he'd be more careful, and that was that, or so I thought. My grandfather pointed at each of them when he said their name. So many things you can't see in this picture. Alana's hair was so red you'd think it'd somehow find a way of bleeding into these old picture. Lihua had the most joyful laugh. When she got going, the whole town could hear it. I never saw her without a smile. Sten's arms were covered in this old scars. I never got the story for all of them, but he was a warrior, a soldier in another life, he told me. My grandfather rolled his eyes. She said she always had a taste for the dramatic. Any advice I gave Francis he promptly forgot, and the two flirted the whole damn time. I mean, by then I realized she wasn't just trying to get Francis in trouble, she'd had him brought to her just so they could be on a date. But I still didn't trust her. She was strange. Something about her just didn't sit right with me. He paused for a while. But when she came to me, asking for my help to find ways to keep seeing Francis, I couldn't say no. She said she found him handsome, charming, genuine. She called the time we lived in full of sociopaths that would stone Francis if they had any idea they were interested in each other romantically. She promised me she wouldn't hurt him. Promised me that if anyone tried to hurt him, they'd have to go through her first. I told her to get in line, 'cause they'd be going through me first. That smile on her face almost seemed a little condescending, but she said that Francis couldn't ask for a better friend. They started seeing each other weekly. I was their go-between. I'd pass letters in between the two of them, tell them when the other had time to meet. I took that picture right there, he pointed to the one with Bea's friends, and I watched their romance blossom. I learned more about the world from Bea and the others than I ever learned from school. I considered them friends, but the perfect little secret that Francis and Bea had couldn't stay secret forever. I shook my head. I'm not going to like this story's end, am I? I asked. Francis and I were heading to Bea's house, our suitcases were packed. Francis was humming love songs under his breath when I heard the gunshot. Grandfather's fists balled up, knuckles turning white. I saw blood shoot out from Francis' side and he fell to the ground. I turned and saw the sheriff leading a mob of angry men. I could have left Francis then, saved myself from the heap of trouble I was going to be in. But I didn't. I picked Francis up and carried him the rest of the way. For a few moments he was quiet. Cass, you know I've not lost my mind. I'm sharp as I was back then, maybe even more so. But what I saw. I just wanted to forget all these years, and I never can. They disappeared. My grandfather shrugged. When I woke up the next morning, I was in my own bed, all bandaged up. The whole town was in an uproar. The sheriff and his sons, all dead, along with several other upstanding men of the town. Bea was gone, along with the others. No sign of where they'd gone. Francis was also gone. They never found his body, but they went and said he was dead anyhow. Probably for the best. I can't imagine how they'd blame the slaughter on a single man, but I'm surprised they didn't try. We all just pretended nothing ever happened. I took care of Francis' little siblings like they were my own brothers and sisters. I never told anyone before tonight about my best friend. I couldn't believe it. Most of me wanted to reason out how that couldn't have happened. Stuff like that didn't happen. Instead, when I opened my mouth, I asked, was the man in the car today, was it really Francis? What do you mean? I asked. Because the way your eyes lit up while looking at her, it was the same way Francis did when he first saw her. I think I'm going to shut my eyes for now, I'm feeling tired. Go to bed, Cassandra. I love you. I swallowed the hard lump in my throat before getting up. "I love you too, Grandpa," I said before fleeing the room. The funeral had long been planned, nearly everyone in town attended. People came up to me and told me how my grandfather was the most open-minded and kindest of people. I got told stories of his generosity, his good sense of humor. Hours passed until I was finally sitting alone between his grave and the ones of my parents. My tears had dried up, leaving an empty hole inside me. For the first time in my life, I could truly say I was alone. I heard quiet footsteps approached and I looked up to see her. Bea was wearing a dark coat and black stockings. Her hair had been carefully pinned back, her eyes reddened with tears. "Can I sit with you?" she asked. I nodded and patted the ground next to me, the side closer to my grandfather's grave. She nodded before taking her seat, folding her legs under herself. "Your grandfather was my friend. I owe him a great deal. Did he tell you about me?" she said. Shot 3 times, carrying the bleeding body of my dearest love and his dearest friend, Bea's breath shuddered and she wiped her eyes. I could never repay that. I offered, but I knew he wouldn't accept the only thing I had to give before he even responded. I'm not sure if he even remembered the talk we had before I took him home that night. Her fingers combed through the freshly turned earth. Eternity. I knew what offer was hidden behind those words. I glanced at my parents' graves, dead when I was just a little girl. I looked at my grandparents' graves, much newer than theirs. I took Bea's hands and she pulled me to my feet. "I think I wouldn't mind visiting Paris. I've always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. Is it more beautiful in person?" I asked. "You look a lot like your grandfather. Come on in, we got space to squeeze in one more, dot."
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I did it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.